That was a long one.
It was a long one. You know why it was a long one? It was actually the second time that we've heard that tonight.
That me and you have heard that tonight. Listen, let's just get, you know what? Full disclosure, let's just get this out in the open. We already have been recording this episode for about 20 minutes when I discovered that I had not turned on Adam's mic. So now we're going to try to recreate the magic that comes with the first time go through. But I don't think it'll be that hard because we get to talk about Mr. Al Capone today and the Chicago outfit, but mostly Al Capone.
For the way that we do this podcast, it's a shock that doesn't happen more.
That might be like the second time that's ever happened.
We're going on 4 years, and if that's the second time it's ever happened, that's pretty good.
That's why it angers me so much. And
we're over 99%.
I know, but that's still not good enough for me. The feeling I get when I look over at the laptop, which Adam can't see, and I see that his little audio bar is not doing anything and mine is doing all of it, there's a cold sensation, because then I have to go and look at him. And he knows there's something wrong when I give him a look, and I have to explain what just happened. But I digress. We're going to go ahead and push on because there's a lot of good shit in here.
Al Capone might be the number one. If you say gangster, Al Capone has to be the first name that rolls off your tongue, right? He's universally known as the guy that kind of is the representation of a mobster.
If you know the name of any gangster, if someone's just like, hey, name a gangster, like, I don't know. Tony Soprano or something like that. Name a real gangster. If they know a real gangster, it's Al Capone.
Is Tony Soprano based on anybody that you know of? Or
I
is
don't
he
know.
An amalgamation?
I think he's probably an amalgamation.
Because I was listening to an interview from a lady who I think she works like the crime museum in Las Vegas, and she says that they get a lot of questions about Tony Soprano. And I was thinking, wait a sec.
I think that's just the fact that people can't fucking separate reality from fiction.
They study on HBO.
Mm-hmm. No, wasn't it that like a show like The Office where it's the real people in the office and they're talking to the camera, but he doesn't know that their cameras are on him?
How incredible is it, though, that the number one gangster that you think of doesn't come from or doesn't do most of his operations in New York?
Yeah.
He's from New York, but he ran Chicago. And the whole idea that
you don't think about Chicago when you think of the mob. You think you're thinking, and again, this is probably shaped by, what we've seen of the mafia in movies and shit, but you always think of it in the sense of New York, New Jersey. Maybe they have a satellite office in Las Vegas, but
used to.
Yeah.
Maybe, I probably still do.
But I mean, there was a time where the attention when it came to any mafia or mob activity, I don't even know if I consider this the mafia. This feels like New York stuff is mafia. This feels like mob.
Yeah, and it's technically at this point, I think it's kind of pre-mafia. Because really what happens is I think the difference mainly between Chicago mobsters and the mafia that happens in New York is you have 5 families in New York that are kind of varying on the power structure, but they're all fairly equal.
Because they've all been there, established.
Yep.
It took time for people to move west, and it's going to take time for mafia's not going to move in some place where there's not an industry that they can try to take control of and make money off of it.
And when a reprisal happens in New York, it's going to happen between multiple families. I think Chicago at this point in time is pretty much buttoned up as far as the mob works to where there's really not a lot of big competition, so it's never really going to rear its ugly head.
So you think that there's been enough of a conflict between different 5 families and everything that at this point they're just kind of like, we know what this leads to. We've kind of hashed out some stuff. We're going to operate. Of course, there's still mob violence and everything, but they have a much more, I guess, structured operating agreement based upon the past experiences and like interactions they've had with each other. You go out to Chicago and it's like, hey, there's these guys over here, and these guys don't like these guys. They're still going through that phase of where it's just like fighting over shit.
And they went too far. St. Valentine's Day Massacre went too far for them to have to look at it and be like, all right, we got to go under the radar.
Which to me is, and I know we're getting into the weeds already, but when you hear about everything that leads up to that, and then you're like, really? Like this was the tipping point when people were, but then you actually break it down and you're like, yeah, I guess that's a lot of dead bodies all at once. Regardless of how many other instances of 1 or 2 dead bodies have happened, having to kind of look at that and being like, yeah, we should probably knock this off.
Well, we're talking about a very interesting time in the United States history in the interwar period where you have prohibition going on and you have an entire industry shut down, but then an entire industry opened up to a black market. And the movement of booze suddenly becomes the greatest asset to a mob organization.
You have like one of the most long established and largest industries in the country. Booze is business. Booze is recession proof.
Would you say the oldest vice ever, probably? Or sex still?
It would still be sex because people were like doing sex stuff before, so they figured out how to ferment liquids and all that kind of stuff. But close second, definitely. But you're taking and you're saying, okay, so there is this nationally established, very high demand service in which we're just going to go ahead and not do anymore. And expect everybody to just to be like, oh, okay, so we're all giving it up. And then you got some other people that are like, but do you have to give it up? It's going to be a little more expensive, but we can definitely still get everybody who still agrees with it, which was the majority of people who still wanted to drink. You're leaving this unavoidable, or like you can't ignore this hole in the market that it's been left. And all it takes is somebody to be like, yeah, I can figure out a way to do that. Do I have to kill some? I got to kill some people. That's fine.
And had that market never come online, we may not have ever known Al Capone.
I don't think so.
He probably wouldn't have popped up in our history beyond just a made man or an enforcer for somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the brilliance of what Capone is he fills this market void in a way to where he's not just filling the market void. He's learned enough from guys that have taken him under his wing to when he spreads his own wings and becomes a boss at like, what, 26?
Yeah. Do you want to use this time to redo your disclaimer about?
Okay. Yeah. So before we start the episode, ratings, 5 stars if you can spare them. It's excellent to see you guys go out there and get it. We get a little monthly report from Spotify that tells us how many new 5-star ratings that we get. The reviews have been great. It gives us an easy kind of quick little interaction that Chris and I can both cover. The subscriptions have been going through the roof. Thank you so much. I want to say we're coming up close to 25,000 on Spotify. Mm-hmm. And again, if you're not there, patreon.com/historicallyhigh. We got extra episodes. We got game shows. We just recorded one that actually got recorded before we started the episode. We just like to have a little bit of fun.
Pause it right now, unless you're driving. Patreon.com. It's got an app. We're easy to find. You get a whole bunch of stuff every month.
And I'm also...
for less than a cup of coffee.
I'm also currently trying to figure out, because I think I might be using the wrong device, how to basically port Patreon episodes. So if you are a subscriber on Patreon, you can just pull them up on Spotify. If I can get that nailed down, hopefully that makes it even easier to listen to. So that way you'll get the teaser to kind of throw you a little bone. But if you just want to sign on, you'll get the episodes there too.
So the disclaimer I was talking about was that at certain points during episodes with these types of topics, sometimes, not to me, you can come across as pouring on the admiration a little bit too much.
Yeah, we're not going to talk any of these bad people that we're talking about. Nobody's a victim in this. Everybody is wholly to blame for what they did. Horrible, awful murders. These people are taking lives in order to make more money. They're not good people. I say that to say that if it sounds like I might be taking their side in certain situations or maybe trying to shift blame, I'm not doing it because I like these people. I'm doing it because these are more complicated issues than just saying this guy was a bad guy and he did bad things.
Do you know what I think it is? We talked about this last week when we were doing the Miracle episode, and we don't know a ton about hockey, but I know that Wayne Gretzky is the GOAT when it comes to hockey. That's kind of a general consensus. Mm-hmm. You cannot be interested or agree with the game or not like the game, but if someone's like, this is the best person at that game, you have to give a little bit of admiration and saying, well, I don't really like that, but if they're that good at what they're doing, you got to kind of give them their props.
Well, there's also just there's factors to everything. We're talking about a group of people that came to a new country that were stone cold poor for most of their existence, and they had an opportunity to make more money than they had ever seen in their entire lives.
Do you feel like also, and I know we're like 10 minutes in, we haven't hit the theme music. We know you guys are frothing at the mouth. Do you think that this is also a situation where you can kind of look at his life, look what he did, and because you know how it ends and what causes the end, and because it's almost like comical a little bit, that you can be like, oh, this guy kind of like, there was a sense of poetic justice to this.
Yeah. No, this has a happy ending.
Yes.
It has a very happy
I mean, not
ending.
for Al.
Well, maybe for Al. Who knows?
Okay. Well, before we get too far into it, because we have to go back and explain where it came from, let's just hit the theme music and get into Al Capone.
It might be. We haven't done an intro that long in a very long time.
No, I don't know if we've ever done an intro that long.
used to-
I've forgotten about it. You've had to remind me a couple times that I have forgotten the theme because I started getting into it too much, but I don't think we've had a solid, just talked intro like that.
We also used to record the bullpen session before we got into an episode too, so
That's
those
true.
would be 10 to 15 minutes.
All right. So we have Alphonse Gabriel Capone, born January 17th, 1899. We get the most famous gangster is a 19th century baby.
And enough so to where he could be in his 70s and the 70s. Like, there's a chance, based upon the money that Al Capone makes, that if he led a healthy life and he didn't dip his dick wherever he could put it, he, at a young age, he could have
his
made
whole
it.
life. Come on.
He could have made it into the 80s.
Yeah.
Like, it's nuts to think that we only got him.
I think odds were greatly stacked against him to try to make it that far, but
No, but he could have
It's a
seen the
possibility.
60s, man.
That's
he
true.
could have seen Vegas in its heyday.
That's
he
true.
might have been a part of what was going on in Vegas had he lived longer.
yeah.
So, Al Capone, born in Brooklyn, New York, to Teresa and Gabrielle Capone. He was born the fourth of 9 children. They had 9 children. And I'm sure back then, a Catholic and 9 children were probably, you didn't even have to ask how many kids they had. That was probably pretty standard for
Gabe
the
and
course.
Mother Teresa like to fuck.
But he was the first Capone child that was made and then born inside the United States. As they came over, they came through Ellis Island. They had 2 children already. There's a good chance you think Teresa had to have been pregnant, right?
Yeah, because if he's the first one conceived and born in the new world, they did come over from Italy. So in, I think, 1893. So they were over here for, 6 years before they had Al.
And in that 6 years, you have a man who was once, a baker and a pasta maker?
And then becomes a hair taker. He becomes a barber. I go from being the baker and the pasta maker, and now I do the hair taker.
That had to be, when he walked into barber school and he's like, is this where the hair takers train?
Yeah.
And they're like, hair takers. Yeah.
I go from baker, pasta maker, hair taker.
Gabrielle kind of had to transform his life because there was a lot of other pasta makers apparently that had come over from Italy. And those jobs were all taken. They ended up settling in Brooklyn, right across from the Naval Yard, in a tenement-style building that had people from every walk of life that had come over. They didn't move to Little Italy. They weren't around all of their other people.
That was a big thing for him. Anytime someone would make reference to him being, because again, that's going to be the generalization, New York mobsters, stuff like that. He was like, nah, he's like, I'm American. I was born in Brooklyn.
Which usually...
Yeah, so my father was a baker and a pasta maker, but...
And he became a hair taker. At the age of 11, they end up moving into an apartment over Gabrielle's barbershop. So they're not in too bad of a financial position for him to run his own barbershop. Al, growing up, wasn't a bad student. He had three older brothers, two of which were kind of polar opposites of each other. You had one that ran around and broke the law a lot, and then you had one that was pretty studious. He also had a third brother that ended up going over and fighting in World War I, losing track of the family, coming back, not being able to find them, ends up changing his name for some reason. Maybe it was because he was moving to the Midwest and Italians might not have gotten along well, and I think it was Ohio. But he ends up becoming a Prohibition agent.
Yeah.
Al Capone's brother becomes the opposite of Al Capone. He had to have been reading the newspapers and seen his brother's name and been like, oh, they're in Chicago.
I wish I would have looked into this now. Do you think that the Prohibition Department ever made the connection because he had gone under a different name?
I don't think they did.
And never. Oh, that'd be nuts, right?
It would be, and not to mention, how does he even try to, like, they're going to try to bring him back into the organization to make him a mole for his brother? Like, he just walks back into the life, he's like, Al, it's your older brother. I'm back.
I don't think that ever, I think that he wanted to distance himself from that.
Yeah, he had chosen his path in life.
Prohibition agent, yeah.
He wasn't necessarily a job that I would have, but he was making something of himself. Al himself was a pretty decent student. He was kind of a mix of those two, the brother that liked to run fast and loose and the studious brother. He got decent grades. Somehow he was a 14-year-old sixth grader. That feels like...
Not sure how the grading system at that point worked. He was either held back, which contradicts the good student thing, or they had like 10 grades.
And from what I heard, and I'm pretty sure it's probably pretty close to what you heard just at the rate that I had heard it. I had heard a few different things. But at the age of 14, he might have punched a nun in the face.
I think it's a pretty general... The consensus is that he punched a nun in the face.
If hell's a real place and the Catholic Church has some sort of bearing on that, I can't think punching a nun in the face is...
It's not going to do you any favors.
No, not going to help you at
I don't
all.
know how many Hail Marys you got to say after punching a nun, but...
Well, they remove you from the Catholic school for that. So at the age of 14, he is out of school, only has a sixth grade education, real good in math, real good reader. He had some skills that were going to pay off in the long run. He bounced around to different jobs because Al had to help the family because there was fucking 9 of them on a barber's salary, which Teresa took in laundry. She was a seamstress. She worked in the house while she was raising the kids. But again, you need kind of a second solid income.
And Gabe is insatiable.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he's got to be serviced too. So I'm not sure if this is a career path, but he was said to have worked in a candy store. He worked in a bowling alley as a pin setter because there just used to be little kids working in the back
We're
around
so
the
privileged
gears.
with our mechanical pin setters. It used to be tiny children back there stacking them up.
And then we know for sure, based upon what happens later, he worked at a box factory. Gabrielle was trying to push his son towards maybe finding a straight and narrow path and giving him some extra money. He ends up buying him a shoe shine box.
I feel like this is a situation where he's like, hey, nun puncher. And just shoves the box into his arms and is like, go start fucking shining shoes and earn some money.
Say your Hail Marys while you're shining shoes. He goes to work in Lower Manhattan, which is where the movers and the shakers are. The guys that are walking around in suits. Anybody that could need their shoes shined is probably going to be in this area. And Al has a pretty decent run of it. Al's making okay money being
He's
a shoe shine.
charismatic. He can talk to people. He's charming.
He had a lot of that going for him. And he wasn't the only guy that was working the shoe shine racket down in Lower Manhattan. There was other shoe shine boys that were down there that had their boxes on street corners that were kind of moving in. Al looks around the neighborhood for inspiration, you would call it, from older adults as he saw these gangsters going into these businesses and running protection rackets.
It's basically just like he's looking around at all these other shoe shiners and he's like, there's got to be a solution to all this. And he just looks across the street. 2 guys in suits walk in. They see him hassling the shop owner. He hands over some cash. And he's like, interesting.
I wonder what that was for. And so he goes back to where he's from in Brooklyn, and he brings some of his friends, and they end up running their own little protection racket scheme on these shoe shine box boys in Lower Manhattan. Again, half of his crew is going around and shaking these guys down and, breaking their boxes, and then the other half comes by and helps them pick their stuff up and says, oh no, what happened here? Well, for a small fee of what you make every day, we can make sure that those toughs that we certainly aren't friends with and don't know at all, that came over and wrecked your shit, we'll make sure to keep them away from you. And
as he then goes around the corner and the two guys that roughed him up are standing there and he gives them $1 each.
everybody gets their cut off with. So we have the formation of Al's first legitimate group, the Brooklyn Rippers. Not Jesse and the Rippers, not the zany uncle.
Pretty sick name.
Pretty close. But the Brooklyn Rippers become Al's first little group that he's in charge of. The Brooklyn Rippers ends up getting disbanded shortly after that because these older gangsters are seeing what's going on out on the street.
The real guys in the mob are seeing these kids play mob, and at the same time, they can't have attention being drawn with cops coming around trying to bust up this fake mob and actually end up busting the real mob, and as a result.
These kids are working out on the street. The police are going to see that and start frequenting the area more to make sure this isn't happening. We don't want them seeing what we're doing in these buildings.
Get out of here, you punks.
He does end up working some more odd jobs for different mobs. There's something called the 5 Points Gang, which is kind of a front runner, a pre-runner.
So they basically tell him, hey, knock this shit off. But hey, if you want something to do, we can find a place for you.
And a 16-year-old Al Capone wasn't a small kid. That's, I think, the most confusing thing is I thought Capone was a small fella. Capone was a thick 6 foot tall guy. Mm-hmm. So again, 6 feet tall to me.
Considered a giant at the time.
Yeah. At that point in time, he definitely could be. 6 feet tall still doesn't seem like a lumbering man to me, but he might have been thick and filled out.
And this isn't like, hey, we'll find someone for you to kill and everything. This is like, hey, it's kind of like a guy trying to get patched in I think like a motorcycle club or something. He's got to be the guy running the bar, making sure the stuff is stocked in the hangouts and everything like that. That's kind of what Capone is basically being trusted with. He can step in to be the bouncer at one of the bars or one of the brothels, or he could, go back behind the bar and mix some drinks if he needs to.
Yeah, and at this point in time, we run into another Weird Al story where he says that he had a couple years playing minor league baseball. This feels like maybe an invention of Capone's mind.
Did he say from like age 16 to 18 or something like that? Or from 1916 to 1918, he played minor league ball?
Sounds like a good way to cover up for being in a gang.
At the same time, semi-pro ball, I mean, is that like recreational, how like softball is now?
He was just playing in the park, and he called that semi-pro. Yeah. He certainly wasn't getting paid. It sounds like good cover for maybe doing some more nefarious things. He ends up catching the eye of this guy named Johnny Torrio. Torrio is kind of his first mentor in this world of organized crime. He takes the young teen under his criminal wing and kind of starts teaching him the ropes.
Torrio's 20... No, I'm trying to think how many his senior. Because Torrio's like in his 40s at this point, early 40s, maybe late 30s.
He's a full-grown man.
Okay. Hanging out with a young teenage Alphonse Capone.
You stick next to my side, kid, and I'll make sure that you become something. Torrio eventually, just after showing him the ropes and working around, ends up getting himself his own offer of going out to Chicago to work for his cousin's new husband, Big Jim Colosimo. And Big Jim is kind of the head of what's going on in Chicago. He is working out of the South Side. They have a fair amount of brothels. He's got some bars underneath him, and he's got a gambling racket going on because those are kind of the three core tenets of what's going on during this time for
those are the things that can't currently be provided and everything. And this is prior to Prohibition, so the booze is still flowing.
Well, yeah, and the booze is flowing, and they're making money hand over fist, probably using that to funnel their money. Before he ends up leaving, Torrio ends up setting up Al under another friend of his named Frankie Yale. Frankie Yale is a wild figure in this.
Oh, you mean Francesco Ioli?
His last name is Aioli?
It's... I'm not going to butcher this in Italian. Iole.
Okay. So not fancy mayo?
No.
He wasn't.
Not aioli. Not like a nice sun-dried tomato aioli. No, but that's what Frankie Yale's. So that just shows you, like, you just pick a cool mob name. Frankie Yale.
I want to punch Frankie Yale in the face because Frankie Yale owned this place called the Harvard Inn in Coney Island. He thought it was funny that he chose the last name Yale and he named it Harvard. Mm-hmm. That was his joke. That was his inside joke. He should have been slapped for that.
That joke probably hit much harder at that time.
Maybe. I don't like it. It makes me itch. Al starts at the door and he works his way up to being a bartender. And it's sort of an innocuous time to be talking about it because he is cutting his teeth, but at the same time, he's a bartender for a gangster. But it kind of becomes a defining moment because there's one night when he's working behind the bar where Al catches a glimpse of a very hot to trot young lady that's walking around this bar. And hormones raging, and this teenage boy ends up kind of following her around the bar. He makes some comments. "You're pretty hot, broad. How's about you go out with me on a date?" And ends up walking up behind her and wrapping his arms around her, which she then freaks out. Well, it wouldn't be bad enough that he was harassing a woman back then, but it turns out that the girl's brother, his name was Frank Galluccio, was just piss-faced in the Harvard Inn.
Well, he was also in the mafia.
Yeah.
He was up higher in rank. He still worked for
Yale's
Frankie Yale
group
and everything like that, but he was still higher in rank.
So this drunk brother sees his sister being harassed and walks over and pushes Capone away, and a fight ensues. And during this fight, Galluccio will break a bottle, and he will spin around, and he slashes Al Capone. I believe it's on the left side of his face.
Yeah, he has like 3 slashes.
Leaves these 3 big slashes on his face. And of course, once Yale shows up, he's like, "Hey, we got to sit down. Al, you probably shouldn't have messed with that guy's sister. Frank, maybe let's not slash each other with bottles. We're all playing for the same team here. Everybody shake hands." And Al has to swallow it because this is a made man, pretty much. That's telling him.
he basically just tells him, he's like, "You were messing with it regardless. This is someone that outranks you by a lot." And again, this, the structure and the hierarchy is like a paramount part of the mafia. So basically he's like, "Al, you have no grounds in this situation, but I like you. But when it comes to the structure of this thing, he's completely in the right to do this."
Yeah, I don't know. It's when we know about what happens later on with anybody that crosses Al Capone, Frank Galluccio might have been pretty lucky.
Buddy, he actually hires Frank Galluccio at one point as a bodyguard.
Really?
Pays him like a pretty decent amount, like $100 a week, and basically says, "I would have done the same thing if it was my sister."
Okay. And he did have 2 of them, so there was a little bit there to where he could pull from. I'm sure also a little bit was like, "Hey, you kind of got the best of me in that fight. If I need somebody to protect me, I'd want somebody that can kick my ass protecting me."
I feel like we're painting Capone in already too good of a light. Hey, he's a stand-up guy.
Yeah, well, to fix that, right around the same time, Al was working out of the Harvard Inn's brothel that Yale was running. And at this point in time, being the bodyguard, he was allowed to sample some of the wares and ended up getting syphilis from one of the sex workers. I was always pretty much under the assumption that maybe he just didn't realize that he had syphilis. Now, I've never had syphilis, so I don't know the exact symptoms, but I'm pretty sure if I had syphilis, I'd know something was wrong.
Yeah, I think you get leaky dick with syphilis.
It does turn out that he did know. He just said that he was afraid of needles at the time. And it wasn't like there was a sure cure-all to be able to knock this out. I think penicillin was a thing. No?
Nope.
Really?
There was something that you could take, and it had a limited amount of time that you had to take it within contracting it, but it could get rid of it, and it could kill the syphilis.
It was something with a slin in it, but it wasn't penicillin.
Yeah, it wasn't penicillin. I want to say that his brother, I can't remember which one, was kind of, he had brought in a little bit and was kind of working with him at the time, or just, sampling the benefits of working in a brothel. His brother
Get the family discount?
His brother had gotten gonorrhea, and Capone had gotten syphilis. So even, weirdly to think, even if those situations had swapped, Al still would have got syphilis at some point.
Yeah,
I'm very confident he still would have got syphilis at some point, but his brother had actually gotten it taken care of. Al didn't. And there's kind of like Also, there's like, one of these things that they're like, we can't really definitively say when it happened is when he got syphilis. Because there's also someone saying, well, he didn't get syphilis until he went to Chicago and he got that Chicago syphilis.
Yeah, there is a life event coming up that's going to affirm when he got syphilis.
What do you mean?
Because, well, we'll get to it very quickly here.
Yes.
So during the day, he's working at this box factory. He's giving his family that money from the box factory. At night, he's going out and working for Yale and the brothel and the Harvard Inn. And he's pocketing that money. Well, in the front office of the box factory, Al ends up meeting the love of his life. It was an older Irish Catholic girl named May Josephine Coughlin. They fell madly in love pretty quickly. I think Mother Teresa may have been a little angry that she wasn't Italian. I know for a fact that May's family was not really pleased with how Capone was himself.
They were Irish, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I'm sure that there was a little divide there. Thankfully, they both had the Catholic side on it. I'm pretty sure May didn't tell her parents about him punching a nun in the face. That
Probably
might have
not.
been an issue. But a couple weeks prior to their marriage, May ends up having their one and only child, Albert Francis Sonny Capone. And Albert Francis Sonny Capone pretty much immediately loses all of the hearing in his left ear, and I believe was born 2 months premature. And that was due to the syphilis that Al ended up giving May that was then given, I'm not sure this is the right word, congenitally?
I believe that's the correct word.
To Sonny.
Yeah.
So Sonny was born with syphilis because of a choice his father made.
Yep. So he ends up marrying Josephine. He's 19. I want to say she's 1 to 2 years older.
I think she was over 21 because he had to get permission from his parents because he wasn't 21 yet.
Okay, so that was December 30th of 1918 that they get married.
Yeah, and this is a situation where usually you would think that they would want to have the marriage before the kid, right? Just to make it look close to semi-legit. Her parents were so angry towards Capone for getting her pregnant that they actually made them wait.
They said her mother, like, kind of could see through his bullshit.
Yeah.
And kind of knew what type of person, or more so what type of person he was.
He just kept itching his crotch when he came over for dinner.
I know what that means. Al ends up getting into some trouble in New York, as one kind of getting more and more involved with the mafia is prone to do. And basically, to get him out of that situation, Yale is like, listen, Torio's actually, he had moved to Chicago. He'd still been, frequenting in New York, but he had moved to Chicago in like 1909 to run Jim Colissimo's brothel business that was happening in Chicago.
It had to have been before or after 1909 because Al would have been 11.
Torio had moved there, but had been frequenting and like going back and forth. So he wasn't just having to be based, but he had gone there first in 1909 on Colissimo's request to run his brothel business.
Okay.
He still was able to go there in New York and spend time there to like mentor and like meet Capone. Well, I don't think they had their, I think what ended up happening from what I could kind of discern is Torio kind of got him in there. It was the one to kind of be the guy that was higher up that accepted him into the fold. When he left and was kind of busy doing stuff in Chicago, I think that's when he kind of got passed off to Frank Yale. Mm-hmm. And whereas Torio was more of the business side of it, he was the one to teach him restraint, to teach him how to handle it, not in the spotlight. Frankie Yale was more of the, what you would think, one's a boss and one's the guy that goes around and breaks people's knees with a pipe.
It's very much casino.
Yes, Frankie Yale is, again, he's a mentor to this guy.
Frankie Yale is Joe Pesci.
Yes, he's 100%. The physical stuff. He gave him the lessons on how to do the physical shit.
Yeah.
Like, this is how you properly snap a thumb.
Torio playing ace and teaching him the ins and the outs of the actual business, and Yale showing him how to institute the business.
Yes, yeah. Basically, Torio was like, this is how you run it when you get to my level. And Frankie was like, this is how you have to do shit at my level.
Yeah. So the way that I heard this was Al had one chance to go legit and to make it happen, and it comes after marriage. He ends up taking a job as a bookkeeper because he's good at math. Mm-hmm. He knows what he's doing. And then in 1920, Gabrielle passes away. And Al has to become the breadwinner of not only his new family with his son, but also you have to take care of your mother and the rest of your siblings at the same time. Mm-hmm. So this is when he dips his feet back into Yale's business. He wasn't out of the business for very long. Yale takes him back with open arms. He ends up running afoul of somebody who was bigger than Yale in New York. He might have had a hit out on him in New York. And Yale says, well, Torio's in Chicago. He's asked you 1,000,000 times to come out there. If you stick around here, you might die.
You will die. I'm not protecting you from this guy because I'm not showing up on this guy's radar.
So maybe see if Torio's got any room for you out there. And he did. He ends up moving out to Chicago and running some of these brothels under Big Jim for Torio. Torio is basically Big Jim's second in command. I don't know if that's because Torio is a great businessman. I tend to think that Torio is a pretty great businessman, but also there is the familial connection of being Big Jim being married to his cousin.
Okay.
So there's
you didn't mention that.
Yeah, so Big Jim, or Torio's cousin is married to Big Jim Calissimo.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of a family connection there.
So Calissimo's wife is Torio's cousin. Gotcha.
Yeah, that'll rear its ugly head later. But Al does pretty well when he's out there. And Chicago the world's going to change. The United States is for sure changing at this point in time. But something major happens November 18th, 1918, when the 18th Amendment's passed. We have a little bit of time after that where it's not fully instituted for full-on prohibition because we have the wind down from what's going on with the war when we were rationing different crops for the troops and all that.
We can't just cut these fucking veterans that are all suffering from the worst PTSD ever experienced and then just be like, oh, you know all that stuff you've been self-medicating with, you can no longer get anymore.
Yep, you're coming back home. Good news, you're coming back home. Bad news is there's no booze to be seen. And this is a pretty big shakeup for the mob business at this time. 1 year later, you have the Volstead Act that's passed. And again, we have a full-on prohibition episode. Go back and listen to it. It was a lot of fun to do. Country becomes completely dry on January 17th, 1920. And when I say completely dry, I don't mean that all the booze was gone. I mean all the booze was hoarded. Because anybody that was rich and of means and had a basement and had any money had gone through and purchased so much alcohol and shoved it in their house so deeply because it wasn't illegal to drink alcohol.
Yes, that's the kicker. So it essentially prohibited the manufacturer to sell alcohol and anyone that was actually selling it. Now, alcohol was still being made because there were medicinal things, not to get too far into the prohibition thing, but because you could get a doctor's note, right, to have some whiskey if you were dealing with like chronic stress or something like that.
The shakes. But if you're dealing with alcohol withdrawals, you can get a prescription for alcohol.
But like you said, there were all these people that had a shit ton of money that threw all these dinner parties and didn't want to have to go without. So they just bought up an insane amount of booze just to hoard it away, basically to weather the storm until this silly thing that was prohibition was going to get repealed.
Well, there's also a situation where Chicago is so close to the Canadian border, and Chicago had a hell of a lot of breweries. This was a big business in the United States. Might have been number one or number two at the time, alcohol sales. And once these breweries are defunct and put out of business, it's not like you can go sell all of your brewing equipment to another brewer.
Yeah.
So they just basically sat abandoned in these warehouses that went up for sale in Chicago. So you have real estate that already has all of the infrastructure put into it, and you have a mob that could potentially have all of the funds to start buying up real estate to diversify their portfolio, and then just happen to walk into a full-blown alcohol-making setup.
Which is funny because in the beginning, Chicago was, and there's going to be a mayor that comes into play here, that basically is running on the platform of not enforcing prohibition. That's like one of his big things, like, hey, prohibition, fuck it. Yeah. So you have this situation when this stuff first kicks off with illegal manufacture of alcohol, that, like you said, there's these warehouses that are already set up. They just start getting used again. Because all of the cops, or a large portion of them, and the politicians are on the take. So it's not even, once the federal government steps in, they got to be a little sneakier about this. But for a long time, it's just like, it would be like if Willy Wonka's factory was manufacturing stuff, and then all of a sudden it just stopped. Like in Charlie, hey, we haven't seen smoke coming out of Willy Wonka's factory. Like, oh, we're not allowed to make candy anymore. And then some guy that's just going to make black market candy is like, so I'm just going to start the factory up again. And everyone's like, oh, that's not weird.
Have you seen the newest one?
With Chalamet?
Yeah.
That's Wonka. That's not really Willy Wonka. That's like how he gets his start. I've seen it.
I hate that I love it so much.
Really?
Keegan-Michael Key. This is almost
as the like constable or whatever.
This is kind of the exact same thing where you have where you have Slugworth and all of these big chocolate conglomerates that are just paying off the mob.
Oh yeah,
and then keeping all of the other or paying off the police. Keegan-Michael Key in chocolate.
Yeah,
they're probably paying them off in a fair amount of booze too.
Oh yeah.
And they were going down and they were shutting other things down. I really like the new Wonka. I don't know if it's Chalamet or what, but I really enjoyed it.
He's so fucking good.
He is.
Okay, so you have Prohibition. They know it's coming because, of course, 1918 is when it gets, passed through. So it's not like there's not an infrastructure to start grabbing prior to this happening. You know this is going to be an insanely lucrative enterprise to have control of. You have Jim Colosimo, who is basically like, yeah, I'm going to kind of steer clear of the whole bootlegging thing, everything, not really seeing that it's worth the risk or anything. And Torio's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this is something no one in this city agrees with. They're going to be looking, if we can give them a supply, there's always going to be a demand. And Colosimo is basically like, listen, I've made my decision. We're not going to be getting into the booze game. Well, when you have that much money on the table, what's going to end up happening to you if you say, no, I'm not really interested in going that route?
You might not be long for
You're going to get whacked.
Also, it didn't help that Big Jim had just recently taken up a relationship with a singer named Dale Winter, a woman, a blonde-haired woman named Dale, and had just recently divorced his Torio's favorite cousin to marry off Dale. So now Torio can't even look at Big Jim and say, that's my family, I can't kill him. Now he has a green light because he just left his cousin and cheated on her. And he sees this $1 million industry sitting behind Torio's life.
Torio or Colosimo is dead even if he doesn't cheat on her.
Yeah.
He could have stayed married to her and looking at all that money.
You think he would have killed his uncle?
Yes.
Or his cousin?
Yes. It's not, buddy. It's his cousin's husband.
In-law.
That's not even an in-law. An in-law is when one of your siblings is married to somebody else.
Well, May 11th, 1920, Colosimo drives to his cafe. He's supposed to be meeting a new associate, somebody that he had never met before. As he walks into the cafe, nobody else is there. Colosimo goes into his office and does a little bit of paperwork. Guy's not going to show up. Ends up walking out of his office, and out of the coat closet, somebody pops out, puts a revolver to the back of Colosimo's head, and blows his brains out. Walks out of the cafe, none the wiser. A pistol ringing out in a cafe in downtown Chicago feels like he shouldn't be able to walk out the front door without anybody seeing him. Mm-hmm. But this is 1920, I guess.
And also, just the setup itself, because there's only so many details you're going to get. It might have been more elaborate, but it's literally just someone calling him down to his place of business, being like, hey, a man wants to meet with you. And he's like, a man, you say? And he goes down there. He's like, the man is not here. Let me go into the back and do some paperwork. I guess the man is not going to show up. I will walk out now.
It feels like a movie scene.
It feels like someone who was probably very used to not being touched.
Yeah.
In the sense of feeling a little bit invincible and not really expecting anybody to have the balls to go after him.
Knowing what we know now and how normal this feels, it almost feels like this is kind of hacky. But this might have been one of the first times that it happened where some guy was just hiding out in the coat closet and shoots and kills him. Mm-hmm. Like it's the most stupid setup.
Just say the guy. It's Frankie. Yeah. It's Frank Yale.
Yeah, I was going to say we didn't know who that gunman was because we're going to have another instance where somebody gets rubbed out soon, and we're going to have to go over who that gunman is too. Turns out, if there's a big hit that happens in Chicago, New Yorker Frankie Yale has a hand or two in it. So yeah, this is what blows me away. Is Big Jim is assassinated in his cafe, and Torrio just kind of walks into his office and sits down, and everybody looks inside and, hey, Torrio, what's going on, buddy? You now? All right, we'll go out and get to work. Let us know what you need. No question. And it's because I think everybody knew that Torrio was pushing to make more money in bootlegging.
100%.
Everybody was in on this deal.
That's why they're in it.
If it was putting more money in more pockets, everybody was going to be on board for this. So Calissimo becoming the captain.
Torrio.
Or Torrio becoming the captain.
Calissimo gone.
You have Al Capone in his early 20s stepping in to be the right-hand man of what becomes a Chicago outfit. Torrio, being the businessman that he was, really starts to understand, okay, Big Jim getting killed is bad. That might be bad for business, but we kind of have to maybe start talking to some of these other people around, because bootlegging is going to be such a big business. We shouldn't be stepping on each other's toes.
Listen, got to break some eggs to make an omelet, right? But you don't just have the outfit. So can we just call it the outfit now?
Yeah.
So we have the Chicago outfit, which is the one currently led by Torrio. You then have the...
It'll expand.
Correct. You then have the North Side Gang that at this point is run by a guy. I want to say it is Dean. God damn it. I wish it was Dino. It's Dean O'Banion. I'm going to say Dino, though.
Yeah.
And he's running the North Side Gang. And then I think you also have a few other smaller outfits that are operating.
Jenner Brothers gang is down in the South Side.
Yes.
And there's other competing gangs we'll kind of talk about when Torrio circles the wagons. But Al Capone, being the right-hand man, goes ahead and purchases a 2-family, 2-story home on Prairie Avenue. He ends up moving his mother and his family into this house. He brings May and Sonny along, too.
May's got to be like, oh, my God, we're moving to Chicago? That's awesome. Your mother is moving to Chicago with us. You're getting her a place? No? With us at our home. Okay.
She knew marrying an Italian that
I understand that, but she did not like his fucking mom.
Yeah, well, I mean,
May and Teresa did not get along.
Crotchety old Italian lady. I don't think she's going to be too high on everybody's list.
Just saying shit under her breath in Italian about the Irish.
One of these days, I'm going to figure out what you're saying. Interesting fact. Although it was on one street, Elliot Ness, the man who runs the Untouchables, lived 5 miles away from the house that Al Capone bought for his family.
Yeah.
Pretty close.
Didn't Ness live there first?
Yeah. So
yeah, Ness was, there's a whole bunch of stuff with Elliot Ness that the story of Al Capone, Elliot Ness is a figure in it, but not in the way that it's been portrayed. It wasn't really hey, Al Capone going head to head with Elliot Ness in this, this fight. It was so many different factions of the government and, the federal government, local and everything going after Capone. One of them just happened to be headed up by Elliot Ness, who played a role in it, of course, but it wasn't Elliot Ness taking down Capone.
And then who wrote a book series, died of alcoholism. Hollywood gets a hold of it and ends up blowing it up into a story that isn't exactly true.
The way he wrote it, didn't he write it how it actually happened?
Pretty
and then
close.
They got his story and they were just like, we got to make this. He portrayed himself as he was, a guy that was doing this job that wasn't the grand heroic pillar and everything. You know what, during Prohibition, did he say he drank during Prohibition?
Yeah, he was a pretty bad alcoholic.
But he was like, I'm doing my job though.
Yeah, it's... If Hollywood's trying to sell a movie script and the guy who's in charge of the Untouchables isn't a real big fan of using guns, you're probably going to end up punching up the guns if he's not around to say anything.
The other thing too on that, I think, is that you can be, Elliot Ness and be like, I don't believe in this whole Prohibition thing. I'm going after Capone because of the violence aspect of it. Even though I work for I think it was either church or it was the Prohibition, right? Mm-hmm. Even though he was working for them, his, I think, was more geared toward, I'm using this as my way to get to Capone and just to get him off the streets.
Morally, for everybody, it's going to be for the moral good if I get Capone out of here.
Regardless of who I have to be working for to do so. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of that to it. So yeah, you have Al's whole entire family that's moved to Chicago, and for all that's to be said bad about Al, there's plenty to be said bad about Al. It turns out he was an actually pretty good family man. And I'm not going to say that he was faithful to May, because we all know that that's never going to be true.
He could have been a good father. He was not a good husband.
I mean, he only had one wife.
I wish my face could make a sound right now. Buddy, first of all, he gave his wife syphilis right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Okay? He's also not like, hey, I feel bad for giving her syphilis, so I'm never going to sleep with it. No, he's constantly fucking other women behind her back. Yeah, he stayed married to her because he was a Catholic dude married to an Irish woman. And he still lived with his mother.
It's all very true. It's all very valid. I only say that because I think at the end of his life, the fact that May stuck around and took care of him.
That is just do you know how stubborn the Irish are?
Yeah, I guess.
The Catholic Irish? Come on.
So yeah, getting back to this, as we were talking about Torrio being the businessman that he wasn't one for violence. He knew that it disrupted business, and he believed that there was more than enough room to go around, so he ends up calling basically all these gangs to heel for this Chicago gang summit, and they all kind of agree, like, hey, this is what he's saying makes sense. Mm-hmm. Violence isn't going to be good for anybody. So if we can all just kind of section this out, the north side's going to keep their north side, the Gen is going to keep where they are. If we all just stick to the boundaries and we have our own speakeasies around here, everybody can make money.
It's a very simple concept of saying, if we're fighting each other, the violence is going to draw eyes to our operations. We're not going to make money. We're going to lose men, and we're not going to be doing the sole thing that we're trying to do in this, and this is make money.
Every time somebody gets shot on the street, the amount of pie that we have to share in between us gets smaller.
Exactly. Or the more heat that's going to come down, the more our raids are going to happen places, because those shootings are probably going to be done in certain territory and everything. So why don't we all just kind of do what we're doing? Everyone keep their infrastructure. In fact, there can be we can work together in some degrees. There were certain, I don't know if it was the Jenna's and Torio's group that had, both of them had ownership of like a brewery or something like that. No, it's
the north side.
That was O'Banion's crew, right? That's right, because that leads to something else.
Yeah. So this goes along decent for a little bit, and then there's some problems. Because O'Banion becomes pretty unhappy with the Jenna brothers as they're pushing in and encroaching on some of their territory. He doesn't like that Torrio is kind of apathetic towards the whole situation and says, yeah, just don't worry about it.
He's kind of siding with the Jenna brothers, it sounds like.
Yeah, it'll be okay. And that sticks in O'Banion's craw in a bad way. So the city of Chicago has this mayor that Chris was talking about earlier. His name is William Big Bill Thompson. Big Bill had the largest pockets that could be opened up to pretty much anybody in the city. As Chris was talking about, he ran on being the wettest mayor around. He did not care too much about prohibition, and he was on the take. He loved taking bribes. At that point, if your mayor's doing it, the police, who are all, I believe, appointed at the time by like government at that point.
So you have like the mayor, you got the police commissioner, who the mayor is in control of, yada, yada, yada. Just to kind of put it in perspective, how insane the scale of bribery was going on in the city of Chicago. The yearly income that was being brought in for like just their income for the outfit and everything. That's with brothels, gambling, booze, whatever they were running.
Bootlegging took up about 70% of the profits.
A third of that income went to bribery. 33% of the amount that they brought in went to paying people off.
I believe they said right around this time $1 million would be like 17 million in today's money.
Yeah, I think, and you were mentioning this earlier. So you had a $5, so you could make a barrel of beer for $5. You would usually sell it when Prohibition wasn't around for $10. When it came to Prohibition, that then sold for $55. They would say that basically out of that $55 barrel, $20 to $25 of that would be taken out for the bribes.
Insane.
Yeah.
That's so much money. The police are all on the take. And this is at a point in time, I believe they said that the average policeman's salary was between $3,000 and $5,000.
Yeah.
So if you're offering a guy $1,000 bribe and he's going to make 20% of his yearly take on the high end of
To
what
look
he
the
makes,
other way, or to just walk past this building and never look in the windows.
all you got to do. You're none the wiser. It's not like anybody's going to look at you and be like, hey, you were walking that beat when that happened. You didn't see anything. We're going to investigate you.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, oh, well, he wasn't in that area at the time, I guess. Who's going to say otherwise? Mm-hmm. So
Actually, I got these guys over here that said they saw me 6 blocks away, but still walking my beat.
hey, those guys look like mobsters. No.
They're just, passing citizens.
Big Bill ends up losing the election in 1923. He's replaced by this hard ass named William Dever, and the police in Dever quit playing ball. There was a point in time when I believe it was Torrio was speaking with the police commissioner, and he offered him like $1,000 to look the other way, and the commissioner said no. And then he offered him $20,000, and the commissioner still said no. At that point in time, when you're getting squeezed that hard in Chicago, Torrio is looking out towards these suburbs because the suburbs are going to have different mayors, and the different mayors are probably going to be willing to play ball in a smaller atmosphere. Mm-hmm. Now, you're not going to be running the same amount of brothels and gin joints or anything like that in a smaller town because you have less people.
Correct. You're basically only utilizing that town to base your operation out of, where you're going to be doing all the controlling of all the stuff you have in Chicago.
This is it Delaware that everybody parks their headquarters because there's like no income tax or something like that? There's no corporate tax?
Sure.
Rhode Island, maybe one of those two over there.
All right. Before we get into Cicero, let's take a bathroom break.
Okay.
Well, hello. Listen, while we head to the restroom and get ourselves something to drink, why don't you do something nice for yourselves? Head on over to patreon.com/historicallyhigh and get signed up for a little bonus content. I mean, come on, you deserve it.
If you want to keep up with this, our main source of social media is going to be our Instagram, which is Historically High Pod, Pod.
You can also head over to its Twitter. It's X. It's Twitter. Come on. At Historically High. And that's high, H-I like high.
If you have any recommendations you want to get to us, just want to reach out and say hello, you can hit us up on our email at historicallyhighpodcast, HIGH podcast @gmail.com.
All right. And with that said, let's get back to the good stuff. All right. I didn't realize that I knew about Cicero, not in the sense of Al Capone, but I knew it was a suburb of Chicago because of Wayne's World 2. When they're backstage at the Aerosmith concert and after everyone leaves and they look around and they see it's like a bunch of weird people and then those guys come up, he's like, where are you from? I'm from Cicero. I'm from Wilmette. Isn't it cool to be downtown?
Cicero is, I don't know. I was looking at pictures of it.
It's gangster's paradise.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if it's the most picturesque suburb I would think of Chicago, but it certainly wasn't back then. They enjoyed partying. They enjoyed hanging out. They had a mayor named Joseph Clenna. Clenna was open for business. Clenna was pretty happy to see a new industry move in there. They already had speakeasies. They didn't really have a lot of brothels or gambling rackets. So there was some new industry coming in, but also they were there to sell booze.
Guys, we got all these vacant buildings that used to be bars and everything like that, totally ready to be turned into a brothel.
Maybe the most badass part of what happens in Cicero is they just set up shop at a hotel. Mm-hmm. They had like an entire floor of a hotel in downtown
Hawthorne.
Cicero. The Hawthorne Hotel, they had a gambling racket in there. They had a bar. Just every single thing that you could imagine was just being run out of this hotel in downtown Cicero, which, again, if the mayor wasn't on the take, I don't think that would be allowed. Just too out in the open.
So this was since 1923. The outfit, which the way I kind of understood it, the outfit is now what's considered kind of a little bit of more of a conglomeration.
Yeah.
I think the Gemma brothers are kind of part of the outfit, but the North Side Gang is not.
No, they're pretty angry about the Jennas slipping in on their territory.
So being run out of Cicero since 1923, like you said, that was due to the reformist mayor that was actually being elected. And they do not waste time as far as the outfit does, or as far as the outfit goes. When they get into Cicero, the 1924 Cicero elections, and this sounds so weird, we're talking about local government elections, but basically these things are completely bought and paid for and set up by the outfit. Anybody that's willing to play ball, look the other way, let them do what they want, those are the people that get backed to either gain a seat or to keep the current seat that they have.
Yeah, so they're about to pull some shit in Cicero that's pretty scary. Prior to that, just to get back to O'Banion and Torio's lovers' quarrel, they'd co-owned a brewery together in Chicago. And O'Banion had gotten word that the cops were zoning in on this brewery. O'Banion, looking to take a little revenge on Torio for looking the other way on the Jenner brothers, goes in and tells Torio, hey, I'm thinking about retiring and getting out of the business. How about you buy out my half the brewery? Torio's like, yeah, let's do that. How about $500,000? O'Banion's like, that's great. I will use that to purchase a house somewhere when I retire. And then the cops come and raid.
Well, he's kind of like, yes, I would like to make this deal. In fact, let's meet at the brewery so we can handshake and seal this deal. And Tori's like, sure, that seems completely normal. We'll make sure it's like the handing over of ownership of this place.
Now that you lay it out that way, it feels even more just stupid on Torio's part that he does this. Because the cops end up raiding this brewery.
Right when Torio's there.
Torio is arrested for bootlegging, among other things. And then he realizes that O'Banion pretty much set this whole thing up. Pretty bad deal.
Oh, no, Dino.
And Torio was a notoriously safe guy. Torio spent a hell of a lot of time traveling with his wife and left a lot of the daily operations up to Capone because he knew that Capone was up to the job. And Torio also knew that the longer he stayed in one place, the more of a target he could be for anybody that wasn't too happy with him. They went and spent a lot of time, I think it was down in like Arkansas.
Like, think how easy it is to disappear
Yeah.
at this point. Like, there were times when they were buying out, like when they wanted to go someplace out of town, they would just go to the train station, like, last second. They would buy an entire sleeper car, and then they would just end up going somewhere. And we're so used, I know I mentioned this during a lot of episodes, but we're so used to just being able to, like, know where stuff is and have information on the fly. Once you were out of town, unless you had someone stationed at the train station and saw them going and called you, you had no fucking clue where someone was going.
You could jump on a steamboat and head down, the Missouri to the Mississippi and just be in so many different states so fast.
Yeah.
And get off the boat at one of the ports and you're just there.
Yeah.
It was so easy to get away from anybody there. O'Banion doesn't live to take a whole lot of pride in what he pulls on Torio.
This is so, like, and I know it probably comes from this event, but this is like peak mob assassination where it happens.
November 10th, 1924, 3 men enter Schofield's Flowers. Schofield's Flowers is the front for the North Side Gang. O'Banion is working there. Frank Yale, the man we had talked about earlier, the owner of the Harvard Inn that might have been an assassin already once in this story, comes walking in to pick up a flower arrangement for someone who had just passed away that everybody knows. He was the leader of the Unione Siciliana, or Siciliana.
Unione Siciliana.
Siciliana. Unione Siciliana.
Which was is it weird to say, like a overarching Italian-American, not council, but association?
Yeah.
That you kind of, do you know what it feels like? It feels like a weird mob church, like the Roman Catholic Church would be for the mob, and then the president is like the Pope. And you can go against the Pope, but you really kind of want to have the blessing of the Pope.
Well, you need the blessing of the Pope because what this was basically a conglomeration of like a voting bloc. This was all the Italian votes that could be thrown behind whoever was running for office. Mm-hmm. So you can't lose the Italian delegation of the voting group by pissing these guys off.
Yeah. But do you see this is like when they're all gathered together, like this is the Unione Siciliana, like the model UN, and they're like, is the New York sanitation here? And they're like, present. Yeah. And they're just reading off all of this stuff and businesses that they own.
This ain't just the mob. This is all Italians.
Yes.
Are a part of this.
Who are just completely aware that the mob is existing here and everything. And they're just on this council with them.
Yep. Working in and of together. So Frankie Yale shows up.
It's the mafia. It's like the mafia Illuminati.
Kind of.
Yeah.
A little bit. Frankie Yale shows up to pick up a flower arrangement that he's ordered for this funeral coming up. As O'Banion walks out, Frankie Yale is standing there. They go through the deal. Yale reaches over, shakes O'Banion's hand.
I got to shake the hand of whoever made such a beautiful floral arrangement.
And he doesn't let go. And the two other men that accompany Frankie Yale end up opening fire and killing O'Banion right behind his cash wrap. And
like he shakes his hand, doesn't let him go. The other two guys literally just walk up right beside Frankie Yale and just shoot this guy point blank.
Yale doesn't even break eye contact. Supposedly, the rumors are that these other two men that were with him were two Unione Siciliana members. One of them's name was John Scalise, and the other's name was Albert Anselmi. Now, these two guys are going to come back around in this story. This isn't the first or the last time we're going to see Scalise and Anselmi. This leaves Jaime Weiss and Bugs Moran in control of the Northside Gang. And Bugs Moran is kind of the running man of the Northside Gang.
Yeah, so Jaime Weiss in charge, kind of in his Capone capacity. I think that's where Bugs Moran is. And then there's this guy named Vincent Drucci. And I'm not exactly sure what he kind of falls under, but he has some pull. And so this makes it to where it's not just like, hey, we took out O'Banion, we're just going to take out the Northside Gang. They still had like legitimate leadership and backing where it couldn't just be a situation of we took out their leadership or absorbing their territory. They're still a threat.
O'Banion was a message, though.
Oh, 100%, yes.
Don't fuck over Torrio, and you need to know your place. Mm-hmm. This reprisal comes January 12th, 1925, when Capone survives the first assassination attempt. I believe this took place in a restaurant where they just opened fire as he was sitting inside eating. January 24th, Torrio and his wife are ambushed outside of their home.
If you're not safe just sitting down, wanting to eat a sandwich, like where can you be safe? Could you imagine that? That like after, it's only going to take one. You get shot at trying to eat a sandwich. Every time you go into a sandwich shop, how are you going to sit there and just fully focus on that delicious sandwich and enjoy? You're going to be looking out the window the entire time.
In the restaurants that Capone ate at, he had a certain table they would always go to, and he had a certain seat that he would sit in because he had steel plates basically sewn into the back of these chairs, so that way he couldn't get shot from behind as he was eating.
That's the kicker, is it's you are sitting in that spot so they know what your spot is, but that spot is very defensible. Why wouldn't you just be able to move the chairs?
Can you see like everybody firing in there with their Tommy guns, and he's just sitting in his metal chair and he's still just cutting his food and eating while everybody else is getting lit up around him?
It's fine.
So this hit on Torrio January 24th. Him and his wife are just coming home from shopping. They have their hands full of bags. They just leave their car. The driver is taking off. And Weiss, Moran, and another associate, I believe the guy that you were just mentioning, basically roll up on Torrio. He's shot multiple times and beaten. Moran goes to stand over the top of him to line up his kill shot to wipe out Torrio, and his gun jams.
It's crazy during this story, like how many people are just like shot so many times and they're like, and then he lived.
Yeah. We talk so many war episodes where guys or where there's casualties, but casualties back then, I mean, you're probably losing a leg because it's a field hospital. These guys in Chicago can actually go
Are
to a
going
hospital
to a Chicago hospital.
recover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have the money to cover the best care.
Torrio ends up surviving this after being shot multiple times.
You want to talk about sending a message? Like, to kill O'Banion, they send Yale from New York and 2 other guys. To kill Torrio, it's the 3 guys that are in charge of the North Side gang.
They're putting in the work themselves.
Yes.
Torrio wasn't even in town when O'Banion got rubbed out. These guys want to make this real personal.
The other thing, too, is like, yeah, his gun jams. It was either he ran out of ammo or his gun jammed. But in the time frame it took them to roll up on Torrio, come out, shoot him, you don't have time to just be like, hey, someone else hand me, like, they were just like, no, we got to get out of here. You can't take the extra, and I'm not saying that, like, but the extra 5 seconds to be like, you have Moran standing over him. You probably do have the other guys going back to the car. All he has to do is turn around and be like, hey, Jaime, can throw me your gun.
Yep.
Let's just finish this. Or do you just assume because you've shot this guy like 3 or 4 times that it's like, this was just a formality for me to shoot you? You're going to be dead anyway.
And this is almost an allegory for why the North Side doesn't win, because they don't know how to finish a hit.
Yeah, it's not like Torio's sitting there like completely lucid looking and be like, you're never going to get away with this. He's in a puddle of his own blood, just like twitching on the ground.
He was probably waiting. Well, he was probably hoping to die almost at that point.
Yeah.
So he ends up being rushed to the hospital and he's saved. And during his entire stay in the hospital, Capone sleeps by his side.
Capone had just had the attempt 12 days before this.
Yep.
And for some reason, again, I don't know if there becomes this confidence thing of no pun intended, of being untouchable, but your second just got an attempt on his life 12 days ago. And you're like, you know what? 12 days seems fine. It's probably cooled off. I don't need to worry about getting out of my car and being completely vulnerable right now.
Let's go purse shopping.
Yeah.
Just a bad call on Torio's part. But
Well, this gives him kind of a come to Jesus moment because he's like, you know what? I don't know if this is worth it.
yeah, he ends up getting released from the hospital, and then he ends up going and spending a 6-month sentence in Club Fed. He decided that those bootlegging charges weren't something that he wanted to skip out on. And it makes so much sense because Torrio can go sit inside of a prison cell and recover while he has other guys in there that have been arrested intentionally to fit around him and protect him.
Based on what Capone ends up getting when he goes to jail, I'm guessing that Torrio probably received the relative similar treatment in regards to a comfort level that he had from both guards, the warden, and people there in prison with him.
Yeah. After Torrio does his prison sentence, he comes back to Chicago. He pulls the keys out of his pocket. He throws them over to Al Capone. He says, me and my wife are going back to Italy. We're going back to Sicily.
It's your gang now, kid.
26 years old.
The fuck? I know, right?
Nobody has their life figured out at 26
years old. And this dude is now the head of the largest illegal, organization that's got its dick in everything. 26. 26-year-olds are dumb.
Well, not only that, he's a 26-year-old that takes over this organization that's at war. He had an assassination attempt on his life already. Mm-hmm. He saw Torrio almost get killed. It's not like he walks into the North Side has calmed down at all. So along with fighting the North Side, Capone's men were blowing up businesses that refused to sell their booze. Which, again, when I sound sympathetic towards Capone, this guy was ordering them to blow up any businesses that weren't willing to do business with the outfit.
This is in Chicago, and they are blowing up buildings and speakeasies and things like that. Like, we haven't seen that type of and people can say what they will. We haven't seen that type of concentrated violence, street war type stuff like that in our lifetime. To imagine that at any point you could be just coming out of your office building in downtown Chicago and you're like, I'm going to run down to the corner deli and grab a sandwich. And in that walk, you can see a car pull up and guys jump out with Tommy guns and just spray into the front of a building. Jump in the car and fucking speed away. And you're just like, huh, I guess it is Thursday.
Got to go get dinner and get home.
Yep.
That's
Go
my
home.
next step.
Saw another one today, honey. Oh, really? How far away were you? I was like a block away this time.
Yeah. Al really liked this spot of being the leader. Al was a sharp dresser. This guy had all sorts of tailored suits. They said at any point in time he was walking around in about $1,000 outfit.
Yeah, it got up to $5,000 at a certain point. Oh, and the pinky ring. Do you remember the pinky ring?
That's why I wore mine, just for
Okay.
this episode. I found my biggest, most gaudy, obnoxious pinky ring.
11.5 carat diamond in his pinky ring.
What was it, a $50,000 pinky ring?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
You have, again, 26-year-old in charge of this thing. The name Scarface, I don't think we really touched on it too much. He hated the name Scarface. He would use makeup actually to cover up if they ever took pictures. They took it from the side opposite where the scars were.
Yep.
The name that he liked it was about how he dressed. I can't remember it now.
It's like a
a
made up
snorky.
word. Snorky, yeah.
Snorky is a snappy dresser. But yeah, I mean, he was wearing white suits. He had the signature white fedora. He liked to stand out.
There's a 10-year time in the whole entirety of the world when a fedora wasn't douchey, and it was the 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
I like real big fish. I'm okay with ska. You still look ridiculous wearing fedoras. Let's just leave that to the gangster age.
As the owner of a fedora that I've had for many, many years, I will say this. There are certain circumstances that a fedora is acceptable.
Like if
I
you're
feel
at a
like
news conference, taking notes, what?
No, just, hey, and at this point, I'm grandfathered in.
Okay.
I don't have to answer. I'm not on trial here.
All right.
I'm wearing it around you just to fucking get on your nerves.
Well,
Next week,
I can bet you that I will say enough that that I will get on your nerves.
that you won't see the fedora again for another 5 years.
where it should be. They hosted these wild ass parties where they would just abduct these famous jazz musicians and they would go have like these 3-day benders where they would just go do all the drugs, drink all the alcohol and party. And these jazz musicians would go for like 36 hours at a time, just
Scared shitless.
yeah. And then they would always drop them off, but they would drop them off. They would make about $1,000 a day. Mm-hmm. So while you're being abducted, you're being paid handsomely.
There came a point when word around town to all the jazz musicians that the first time that they're like, did you hear those guys got abducted? Oh my God. And then they come back and they're like, what happened? What happened? They're like, we got abducted, but they gave us $1,000 each. And they're like, oh my God, that's crazy. Second group gets abducted. They're like, did you hear these guys got abducted? They come back. Yeah, we got $1,000 too. At a certain point, very quickly, there were just jazz musicians that were just kind of like walking out on the street being like, I hope no one abducts me to go play jazz at one of their crazy benders.
There were just jazz musicians on the street playing their saxophones, hoping
They
they'd be
traveled
picked
together
up.
in the actual groups with their carrying their instrument cases just in case they got abducted at any point. They were ready to go.
Yeah, they had a good time. They had a lot of fun. Prior to taking over the future Chicago outfit, Capone needed to make sure that Cicero stayed in Clinton's control. And he had to make sure that Clinton would win re-election. So, as Chris was talking about, I believe this was 1924 that this all comes about, 23, 24. He used about 200 men. Capone would post them up at polling places to
This is still when
intimidate them.
Torrio's alive, correct? Or when Torrio is still in charge, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Capone's telling these guys to make sure that everybody votes correctly. So you have these guys with Tommy guns standing outside of voting booths, making sure that everybody's going in and voting for Clinton.
fucking like harassing and assaulting women because they're like, who you voting for? And they're like, this person. They're like, no, you're not.
They went around and just raided candidates' headquarters the night before. They beat up candidates. They ended up shooting up the Democratic candidate. His name was Ralph Hertz. His headquarters. They caught one of the city clerks that was running for office and ended up pistol whipping him out on the street. Just broad daylight.
In a local city election.
Yeah, not Chicago, Cicero. The little sleepy town of Cicero. There was a Cook County judge that deputized 70 Chicago police officers to go restore the peace. Again, 70, not enough. I have a good feeling, though, 70 was probably the bulk of what they had in Chicago, maybe.
The ones that they could try to verify probably weren't getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
So they load these guys up and apparently not a lot of cars available at this point, or like a variety of cars, because both the cops and the mob tend to use the same model and the same color. Like a black type. If you've seen a mob movie, you know what they look like.
Black Buick, black Cadillac, town cars, basically.
Yep. And so all of a sudden you have all of these newly deputized Chicago PD officers who are moving into Cicero in like a convoy. And as they're moving, and this stuff is all happening very rapid fire. Yeah. As they're moving into town, this being the type of vehicles that mobsters would use as well, if you see these things coming, it's one of two things. It's either the cops or it's a rival gang that's rolling up on you. And so Capone's brother, I believe it was Frank, right?
Yep.
Frank happened to be probably supervising the destruction of a fucking another official's office or something like that, is walking down the street as these cars start to roll into Cicero and makes the decision that he needs to draw his gun because these could be another group of a rival gang. And these cops just pull over and get into this firefight and end up killing him.
That fast. Frank Capone, who had been brought in along with his brother Ralph to help Al run Cicero.
Fucking Ralph Capone.
Ralph Capone, the famous Ralph Capone. So Frank Capone ends up being lost, but not all is lost because Clinton would win re-election. And Capone, being the de facto mayor of Cicero, Clinton goes up and gives a speech in front of the courthouse, and he's wanting him to give a speech talking about how he's so happy that Capone is there and that the industries are there and that he's not going to shut anything down. Clinton goes up and says basically the complete opposite, just trying to rope-a-dope the people and say, I'm going to make sure that this town is cleaned up, everything's going to get better, while Capone is standing up there with him.
The town... So you're either going to go up there and say, hey, I'm so glad he's here. You know, the guys that threatened you and had the guns when you were trying to vote and the ones that shot up a bunch of buildings and then got into a firefight on Main Street. Yeah, they're here to stay.
After Clinton gives this speech, Capone promptly kicks him down the steps of the courthouse in front of all of the townspeople that showed up to see this and all of the reporters. Capone kicks Clinton down the steps of the courthouse. And the police in Chicago at this point in time are weakening a little bit. The soft underbelly's coming up. It turns out that Dever couldn't keep the corruption out of Chicago for very long. As the boss, Capone never really avoided the public eye. He regularly gave interviews. He even had different times when he would invite reporters over to his house where he would feed them a spaghetti dinner that were made by his mother.
Of course.
And from what I heard, there were times when they would show up and knock on the door and Capone would answer in a pink apron holding a wooden spoon that's covered in marinara sauce.
Like the goddamn lady on the front of a jar of pasta sauce.
But he was always in the public eye, and this runs counter to every other mobster's desire to stay out of the public eye.
And he somehow thought that this weird act of being this, you know what, I'm just a businessman. I don't like all of this. Never saying that he's responsible. He'd be like, I abhor violence, or what, abhor?
Abhor.
Oh God, thank you. Abhor violence. I'm a family. Look at this. I'm cooking with my ma. Ma, do I like violence? Oh no, Alphonse hates violence. And would just try to paint himself as this, like, I don't want to say oafish figure, but kind of this lovable.
Yeah.
He's got the pasta sauce smeared on his face a little bit. His kids come up, Daddy, you have that. And he's like, would I kill anyone?
He looks like a father. Mm-hmm. He looks like the most unassuming guy. Meanwhile,
do I look like I have syphilis?
Hey, fun joke. It's my mother, my wife, me, and my son in this room. And 3 of the 4 of us have syphilis. Guess who doesn't have it? Mm-hmm. September 20th, 1926. The North Side attempts to kill Capone again. And this might be, I don't know, I'd say it's a borderline brilliant sort of a rope-a-dope.
Real quick. So not to fast forward too far ahead, but one of the things that they eventually have to find to get Capone on is the tax thing. Mm-hmm. So one of the things they call back to when they're trying to kind of build a case and make reference is the fact that at Frank's funeral, they have $20,000 worth of flowers.
I'm sure it was just all donated from all of the other crime organizations.
Oh, I'm totally sure. At the same time, prior to August 10th and 26, Capone's driver is found tortured and killed. So there's still some shit going back and forth.
Yeah, and it's a situation, too, where bringing in the tax evasion stuff, the house that they're living in is in his wife's name.
Nothing is in his name. He pays cash for everything. It's either in his wife's name or his mother's name.
Never even had a bank account. So he's trying to play off while he's dressed in these flashy clothes, and they have this fairly nice house, and he seems to definitely be a man of means with that pinky ring. He's somehow not making 1 cent.
Nope.
Nothing for taxable income. Are we to that?
Yeah, we're to that, but okay. It's so crazy because the thing about taxable income and everything, the whole thing with being taxed on income is the government's like, oh yeah, we don't care if it's illegal income. We didn't see how we didn't specify and put legal or illegal in front of income.
Yeah, we'll talk about 1927 is when that
is. That's when that goes into effect. Okay,
is why the trial is kind of a sham.
It's a good sham.
Well, it's a good sham, but they're charging Capone for years before this law was in place.
Stop.
Okay, all right.
Okay, August 10th, 1926, the
20th.
Standard,
20th.
Sorry. Oh, it's August 20th that happens?
Or September 20th. Are you talking about the rope-a-dope?
I'm talking about the Standard Oil thing.
Oh, I don't know about this.
Oh, this is the thing that you told me about, I thought. Okay, maybe you were just referencing like another broad daylight Chicago Loop type thing. Okay, so August 10th, 1926, it's called the Standard Oil Ambush. Now, Jaime Weiss, so this is against the North Side Gang. This is Capone's retribution.
Okay.
So Jaime Weiss and Vincent Drucci are walking down South Michigan Avenue, like the heart of downtown Chicago. A carload of Capone's guys, including future outfit boss Paul Rica, end up popping out, opening fire in broad daylight. Now, Drucci kind of hangs back and fires at him and kind of holds him off. Weiss ends up just getting the fuck out of there.
Smart.
And even during this entire ambush, no one's killed. But this is a broad daylight, people out and about, heart of downtown Chicago. That this ends up going down.
On Michigan Ave?
South Michigan Ave.
So the Magnificent Mile, one of the most famous streets in Chicago, is where this takes place.
In front of the Standard Oil building, which would have been right in downtown.
Yeah.
Now we come to, so this is Weiss's retaliation for that on September 20th.
Yeah, I love this. So there is a group of the North Side that ends up rolling down this street as Capone is inside this building. I believe they're eating again. They're Italian, so they're probably eating all the time.
It's at the Hawthorne, right?
The Hawthorne would have been Cicero, so yes. All of a sudden, these gunshots start ringing out, and you just hear Tommy guns going off left and right and shotguns. But that's not typical of a normal ambush because there's no glass breaking. There's no massive destruction going on.
There's no people screaming in the streets, nothing like that. So from what it sounds like, the restaurant was ground floor.
Yep.
And probably had big glass windows and everything. A lot of hotels that have the restaurants like that. He's back eating in his specific spot where he's far enough back that he can't see what's going on in the street. So like you said, all the sounds of an ambush, of battle, all of that is popping off, but nothing else is happening. And after a certain period of time, instead of Capone being like, hey guys, go take a look out there and see what's going on. He's like, my curiosity is piqued. I better go have a look. And walks out right in front of the windows.
Yeah. Turns out that first group of shooters was firing blanks.
Mm-hmm.
And just as Capone gets up to see the car exiting down the street, there's a second barrage of cars that end up pulling down the street. And these guys would not be firing blanks.
8 to 10 vehicles pull up, and as they're slowly driving by, guys leaning out with Tommy guns, shotguns, and pistols in 8 to 10 cars open fire on the front of this restaurant.
They said that there were guys that were getting out and just kneeling with these Tommy guns. Because a Tommy gun, again, I think movies have trained us to think that a Tommy gun is something that you can just fire one-handed braced under your arm.
Yeah.
No. This is a two-handed weapon that is heavy.
I mean, we've talked about them enough because in World War II, that's what some of the sergeants had.
Yeah.
It wasn't the type that you see in gangster movies where it's like the wooden, almost like grip-like handle on the front.
Yeah.
This was a more compact version that had more of a stock on it. But
The kick
like you
was
said,
insane.
This is also a drum magazine. And I think what you were referencing is one guy, they said like in a brown suit, got out, walked up to like very close point blank range to the front of the restaurant and unloaded 100-round drum into the front of this. Now, as soon as this guy named Frankie Rio, he's the bodyguard to Capone, right before the fire starts, he throws Capone down and throws himself on top of him and covers him during this entire thing. And it got to the point where no one from, like you said, this is about the execution of the execution.
Yeah.
Finish the job. Like if you're just looking at it from a strictly how this thing went off standpoint, it's like, why are you not making, you have 8 to 10 cars full of guys. You could have stopped 3 of the cars and had 4 guys walk in after everyone was down and just make sure, hey, did we get Capone? No.
Yeah.
They end up leaving as soon as this happened. Capone doesn't have a scratch on him.
Walk inside the building and check. Just double check your work.
There were 60 people. No one died. There were a couple like casualties. I think one woman outside, I think broken glass had hit her in the eyes. Capone actually paid for her surgery to actually save her sight. I mean, a pocket change for him and everything like that. But he does these things throughout when his publicity is bad that he tries to do these, philanthropic type things to try to win the people back to his side as the Robin Hood figure, whatever he's trying to be.
This is the Yakuza. This is what they do. Mm-hmm. When a natural disaster hits, they go and send aid. Not because they're good people, because it looks good.
I'm just trying to figure out how this thing worked, because this sounds like a ridiculous proposal for an ambush. They're sitting there. Weiss is sitting there. Bugs Moran is sitting there, and he's like, does anyone have a plan on what to do? And someone's like, I got an idea. So what we do is he likes to eat, right? He's always in that restaurant. So we're going to drive a car out there and we're just going to fire our machine guns, but they're going to be blank. So it's going to sound like someone's just firing a machine gun. And they're like, okay, how does that kill him? They're like, okay, but check it out. He'll be so curious about why someone's firing the machine gun that he'll approach the area that they're firing the machine gun. And then we have a bunch of guys with real machine guns drive by and those guys kill him. They're like, so your plan is predicated on the fact that he'll be curious and not go away from the sound of the thing that's going to kill him, but he'll go toward it. Like, yep, you're understanding it perfectly. And somehow it almost works.
Yeah.
The execution part of it, the part that should not have worked perfectly. You just can't follow up.
Moran had to have gotten the yips during this, right? Because he already knows that he didn't finish off Torrio when he had the chance. And then they don't finish off Capone when they had the chance.
When those guys get back and he's like, so you confirmed it, right? And they're like, boss, we ended up, 1,000 rounds is what they ended up factoring in. Boss, we launched like 1,000 rounds. We shredded that entire place. There's no way anyone could have survived. Reads the paper the next day and opens it, and it's like, attack in Hawthorne. All 60 people survive.
Yeah, but Moran can't say anything because Moran can't finish his own jobs either. So he's the one guy that can't give.
He was the guy that was like, learn from me.
Capone's only ever shot one time in his life. And do you know, actually, yeah, he's only shot one time. Do you know when that time was?
Nah.
1928. The only time that Capone was ever shot was when he was playing golf. Capone was digging through his golf bag looking for a club and reached in a little too far and accidentally pulled the trigger on his pistol that shot through his golf bag, hit him in the thigh, and tore through his groin and ended up in his other leg. He was out playing golf and had a pistol in his bag just in case.
You're just trying to find you know what he's trying to find? That's like when you start trying to find your weed in the golf bag and everything. You're like, where's the fucking pipe and everything? And then ends up just shooting himself.
When you're playing bad and you start digging through your bag thinking there's something in there that's going to help your game.
You're trying to find, you just shanked one in the water and you're looking for that spare ball.
And all of a sudden you plexico burris yourself. He ends up being taken to the hospital under a pseudonym, which I think is hilarious. The fact that he showed up to the hospital and like, who is this? And he's like, Al Brown. Like, that's Al Capone. Like, that's Al Brown. Like, okay, that's Al Brown. That's for sure Al Brown. Yeah, that's the only time in his whole entire career that he was ever shot, and he did it to himself.
All right. Well, after he ends up surviving this massive drive-by, he's understandably pretty rattled at this point. So
and also mad.
He ends up getting kind of, again, a committee or whatever you want to call it together to talk about this for all of the gangs. And it's basically like, all right, we got some hits in. You guys got some hits in. It's getting a little out of control right now, guys. Really? 1,000 rounds? Seriously? All right. Let's all just be cool. Let's have a truce. Nobody kill anyone else. And let's go back to the business of making money.
And then October 11th, 1926 rolls around less than a month later.
Yeah, it falls apart very quickly. Does part of you think that... Okay, so basically what happens October 11th, Weiss is killed outside of, poetically enough, O'Banion's former flower shop. I guess they're still using it as their headquarters and everything. You close down the flower shop, but you don't get rid of the headquarters.
100% you move the headquarters after your guy gets shot.
I don't know why you don't do that. You know what? Location.
Yeah, and maybe the flower business was pretty good.
Real estate at the point, but, at this point, it doesn't take long for that to happen. And part of me kind of thinks, do you think Capone was basically just trying to kind of cool shit down, lull people into a false sense of security and then kind of do that?
100%.
Okay.
100%. The reprisal for that is the owner of the Hawthorne restaurant that was a close personal friend of Capone ends up being abducted by the new Northside gang boss, Bugs Moran, and killed in retaliation. There's a gentleman named Joe Aiello. Joe Aiello was somebody who got in a feud with Capone. They were feuding basically over the fact that Capone had placed his former consigliere named Antonio Lombardo at the head of the Unione Siciliana. And Aiello,
I like how you put the fingers together and held up your hand when you did that. I feel like that's a prerequisite.
It's the only way to be able to talk in Italian. Aiello ends up putting a $50,000 bounty on Capone's head, which...
He really wanted this job.
Yeah, but... $50K for Capone when you've seen what the Northside did. Granted, you are putting that out to the Unione and everybody else, but $50K to kill Capone when you've seen them dump 1,000 rounds into a restaurant.
He tries a few times before he has to go to this level. So he goes and he tries to bribe the cook at Capone's favorite restaurant to poison Capone and Lombardo. The cook turns around and tells Capone what's going on and who tried to hire him for this. In retaliation for that, Capone had destroyed Aiello's bakery, wounding his brother. And then at that point, he's like, okay, enough messing around. $50,000 bounty. 10 gunmen, at least, that they can figure out, try to collect on this. And all 10 end up dead.
Yeah, Capone's men were pretty good. 1927 rolls around. Big Bill Thompson accepts a $250,000 donation from Al Capone.
Who doesn't have a job.
Yep. Yeah, doesn't have a job, $250K to Big Bill. And he's trying to retake the mayor's office from Dever. Thompson would end up winning the 1928 election with the help of Capone's bombers. Again, shocker there. Big Bill's back in office, and it's time that Capone moves his businesses back into Chicago. He ends up taking residence on the 4th and 5th floors of the Lexington Hotel that was on Michigan Avenue again. So maybe the most important street, I don't know if it was back then. It's a pretty important street now. I hiked the whole thing, and it's awesome.
Does it come from the lake and come straight kind of downtown?
It almost runs kind of parallel with the lake, so
Okay.
you can kind of see everything off to the distance. And at the end, you can get down to what used to be the Sears Tower. I forgot what it is now. And then I believe you can almost ride Michigan Avenue all the way back to Lincoln Park, which is where the Bean is,
Yeah.
which is pretty far away. You have all of this business flooding back into Chicago. They're making money. They're taking up 2 floors in the Lexington. That's how much business they're doing. And you have Capone, who's getting alcohol shipments rolling in from our boy Frank Yale back in New York. And all of a sudden, there's kind of some short shipments that are coming in. Some of the shipments aren't making it at all. And Al's kind of concerned that Yale might be ripping him off. So, a good gangster as he is, he ends up sending his friend James D'Amato to monitor these shipments. Al was right. D'Amato watched Yale just half fill these trucks or fill up these trucks and then drive them to his own establishments. Because again, Prohibition's going on in New York. Al's paying for this up front. If it doesn't show up, it's just free money for Yale.
First of all, it's somebody that he believes he can trust, that he's worked with before.
Yeah.
The way Chicago is and everything, it's not close enough to the Canadian border where you can just simply drive trucks in and run them right into Chicago. You might be able to send some stuff through the port, but there's probably more stringent eyes on that for unloading stuff, and you're only able to bring in, so much. So with him being able to bring in stuff that's closer to New York, you'd be like, well, why is he doing that if he could just bring it in directly to Chicago? You have a lot more area where Canada and the United States are touching right there in that direction. There's already the prohibition set up for booze coming in for the New York gangs and everything like that. So he's kind of leaving Yale to be like, I'm still bringing in stuff. I'm still making beer in Chicago and all those other areas, but I also want to bring in liquor and that kind of stuff from Canada, and I already have the infrastructure over on this side with you to bring that in for me. And I think I can trust you.
That's the big thing. You've killed a lot of people in Chicago for my guys. I feel like I should be able to trust you to do this, but Yale was ripping them off. And D'Amato lets Al know that that's what's going on. Unfortunately, D'Amato's cover ends up getting blown for Yale's guys. And July 7th, 1927, D'Amato ends up being gunned down in Brooklyn on a street corner. So Al's spy ends up getting gunned down by Yale's guys, which feels like that's enough of a message that Yale's...
After reporting back to him that Yale had been ripping him off. So it doesn't take a large leap to find out why he was killed.
And there tries to be a reconciliation over the next year. Capone will bring Yale out. There was a big boxing match. It was a big rematch. I forgot to write down what it was. He brings him out and takes him to the fight, and they talk and kind of smooth things over. But they didn't really smooth things over enough, because almost a year later, July 1st, 1928, Yale receives a phone call about his wife, who was taking a turn for the worse. Apparently she got ill. And without thinking, he ends up rushing off to be with her. His driver offers to drive him. He says no. He jumps in his own car and takes off. As he takes off, he doesn't realize that there is a black Buick that's following pretty closely behind him. And even though this car was reinforced, it had all steel paneling in the doors. They never put any thick enough glass in there to stop it. And he ends up being gunned down by a hitman who followed up after he crashed his car and ended up putting one more in his skull in broad daylight in New York.
Yeah, so they shoot through the back window. That breaks. He's probably ducking down. He ends up running into like a parked car on the side. They get out, shoot him.
Pretty bad.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
No, no, it's a happy ending on that front.
I mean, this is the predictable outcome that if you're in this line of work, this is how you're going to meet your end.
Not only
there
that.
should be the assumption of, listen, if you kill people for a living, you should have the understanding that, and you go in and you're like, man, killing people is kind of easy. Like I remember one time I just walked in this guy's flower shop, shook his hand, and my other two buddies gunned him down. You probably have a sense that some of this is pretty simple. You just don't understand that it's also simple for people on the other side too.
Yeah, and they weren't hiding in a coat closet. It was as simple as making a phony phone call about his wife being sick. He was in New York, though,
so that probably also made him feel a little bit safer, I guess.
And that's absolutely for sure. But again, you know that you're ripping off Capone. You know that you just killed his guy. You know that he knows that you just killed his guy.
Yeah.
It's just so simple. So not only is he getting pinched by Yale, the Northside gang is picking off some of Capone's booze shipments that's coming down from Canada. So much so that it's leading up to February of 1929. Now, February 14th of 1929 is probably one of the most famous instances of a gangster murder that there is.
Yeah, probably one of the biggest instances of like gangland violence. And also this is like, if you're going to track it back to the point of where Capone kind of sealed his own, stamped his own ticket to jail and to prison and to his downfall. This was it right here.
But maybe
this is where you can see the shift.
Maybe it wasn't him.
Huh?
Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe
Don't.
He wasn't even in the state.
He ran his outfit from prison at one point. He has a phone.
What if it was just like one of his underlings that was looking at the situation?
It's not.
Okay.
You think that guy's not going to end up dead for putting that much heat on Capone? That's a decision that has to come from him.
I love that that's something that people have tried to put up, is that it may not have been Capone. In reality, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre couldn't have been anybody but Capone. But the fact that there's people that are still out there willing to humor the idea that it wasn't him is just so funny. I know,
to what advantage?
Yeah.
Like yeah.
Yeah, and who else is doing it at the time? Who else has that big of a beef with the Northsiders that they're going to do this to them? Like, there's no other way to explain it but the fact that it's Capone that does it.
Okay, so they find out that there is a garage somewhere in Chicago that is serving as the Northside Gang's one of their bases or something like that.
It was just basically a truck stop where they brought in all their shit.
Okay.
Where they were hijacking Capone's trucks
and bringing that shit into their place. So Capone finds out where this place is and sets up this, essentially it's a fake raid. So you have, and at this point he thinks that because these shipments are coming in, he has it on good information that Bugs Moran is usually down here at this place.
Supposed to be there.
Yep. So it is set up to where someone ends up getting in contact with Bugs Moran, or he's scheduled. They know when he's supposed to be down there. And they get, I want to say it's two guys in cop uniforms. And as these guys are inside, the garage doors are closed. They hear pounding at the door. Police open up. These guys think it's a raid. In these situations, it's not like, hey, we're going to fight it out with the cops. It's, we have cops on our payroll. We have judges on our payroll. You guys just give yourselves up. You'll go to processing, don't answer any questions, and we'll get you guys bailed out and get this whole thing taken care of. So this is standard procedure. It's not anything that these guys, it's an inconvenience kind of is what it is.
They'll take one of the 20 shipments that we have coming in today.
Exactly. So as these cops come in, everybody against the wall, hands against the wall. These two other guys follow them in with Tommy guns.
Street clothes and Tommy guns.
Street clothes and Tommy guns. And as these 7 guys from the Northside gang are all up against this wall, the guys with Tommy guns just end up hosing them all down.
I take issue with this because they always say that it's execution style.
Mm-hmm.
Execution style doesn't mean that they fired as many bullets as they did at these guys. They were mowed down.
Oh, yeah.
Were they in the pose that an execution would take place?
That's what I was kind of thinking. Execution style is usually when you always think of like somebody kind of sees it coming and knows what's going to happen. These guys thought that they were just going to be cuffed and put into the back of a fucking paddy wagon. And instead, all of them, with the exception of one at that time, ends up dead.
What's the term that they use for not talking? It's like Casona or something like that.
Yeah, it's some type. It's got its own word.
No, it's just
a code or something like that.
It's a code of silence. So they enter the garage. They wipe out all 7 of these Northsiders. There's one guy. The 7th guy doesn't die until after he makes contact with the police who come in, and the police ask who shot him, and he says, nobody shot me.
One dude responds to this because someone ends up calling it in because they heard some noise.
Yeah.
A guy goes in there and sees this, tells the woman to go out that's accompanying him or that has him come to check this, go call the police. One officer responds. And there's apparently like a cub reporter, which, you know, is a newer reporter down on the rung, that they send these guys out from the newspaper just to have to sit down. And I think this guy's actually at the morgue or at the coroner's office, gets a call that comes in and says, hey, we've got 7 dead bodies. And this guy hears this and gets on the phone with his editor, and he's like, there's 7 dead bodies. The guy's like, bullshit. No one's getting that lucky on one of their first beats and everything. Call me when you have something real, and hangs up on him. One of these cops shows up, finds 7 bodies, finds out one of these guys is still alive, recognizes the guy because, of course, they know these guys, and is like, hey, who did this to you? Who shot you? And the guy's like, looks at him and says, no one shot me. Now get me to the hospital. And as he goes out, he's like, okay, just turns around and walks out, goes to call in because they don't have radios or anything like that, has to find a phone, calls it in and says, yeah, need an ambulance. There's a bunch of guys that got shot here. That guy ends up making it, I want to say, to the hospital, but then dies a couple hours later.
Oh, I didn't even think he made it to the hospital.
He might not have.
So I guess just through a quick Google, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre is the most deadly mob hit that's ever happened, which, not to sound gruesome here, but 7 doesn't seem like...
That was kind of my thought. But for a organization who has to operate in the shadows, that's a big fucking hit.
Yeah,
At the same time,
I figured that there would be like firefights in New York where there'd be more guys that were taken out.
you would, but like think about the thing at the Standard Oil place. Like guys jumped out with Tommy guns against a guy with a pistol, and no one ended up dying.
Yeah,
they
and
fired 1,000 rounds into a restaurant with 60 people. No, these guys are horrible shots. They're like stormtroopers.
That's fair. Yeah, to kill 7 in one time, that's pretty accurate shooting.
So now look at it from the standpoint of having the hindsight of seeing this through, so many years. Nothing this big had happened before. Once it does happen, what ends up turning on Capone and causing his downfall, every other person that would have ever had that idea of killing 7 people or even close to that at one time is like, that's what took that guy down. That's what turned public opinion finally against that guy down and made him so visible. We're not going to do that.
There's a rule of 3 in mob hits after the St. Valentine's Day
There's got to be
Massacre.
something of like the lesson to be learned by doing these large scale hits.
The guys that have been left alive because they didn't want to kill more people
These just
and make
mass
it a bigger deal.
whackings of these guys.
Yeah, that was... we'll probably end up doing a Patreon about the St. Valentine's Day Massacre because it's pretty fascinating how they find some of these suspects. And this is like kind of the beginning of forensics being
Ballistics
used.
and forensics. I don't want to, I can't explain how this occurs, but apparently Northwestern had a crime lab and they were looking into like ballistics and forensics and everything. And a guy from Northwestern came down and looked at everything and had this thing that was basically to me, it just sounds like he had 2 microscopes, one on each eye.
They call it a comparative microscope.
Yes. And so he could look at 2 things side by side. And so as he's looking at these 2 things side by side and he's examining shell casings, he's able to put together how many guns there were, how many rounds were fired out of each of those guns. He's like, so this occurred, there were 2 Tommy guns and there were 2 shotguns. Great. How does that help us? They went and checked a bunch of the guns that they had gotten to lock up from other gangsters and stuff like that. Nothing ended up matching up. But later down the road, they end up finding these 2 guns.
Not only that, the first thing that they had to clear was they had to clear all of the guns that are used by the police force.
Yes.
Because those 2 policemen were identified walking in there.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to make sure that this wasn't a mob hit that was funded for the police
No,
to
it
go
was just
in
2
and do this.
mobsters
Yep.
dressed up like cops.
They end up clearing those. They clear out all of the guns that they had in storage. Anything that's being taken by them, they're finding out. They end up tracking a guy to St. Louis, and I think he ends up dying. And again, we'll cover this more in depth. But they're able to go check his guns, and he was able to put positive IDs.
They find like 2 Tommy guns in his house, and he ends up escaping. I think he dies at a later time. But the guns that they find in here, they're able to somehow tie those back.
Yeah, pretty fascinating how ballistics is a thing back in 1927 or 29.
So the reporting on this, of course, this is front page news nationally as well, but especially in Chicago. And because you have the Chicago newspapers, reporters, journalists that have been reporting on the gang wars and everything that have been happening, they know the major players, they know who has beef with who. And basically, it's a foregone conclusion that Al Capone is behind this, regardless that he's in Miami or anything like that with his family. This is very, very clearly a case of the outfit taking out the competition. And so, because you have these newspapers and everything putting out this information about who's responsible, public opinion turns on its fucking heel on Capone. He's no longer this businessman who's, people were able to look, and I know I'm changing up here, people were able to say, what's the price of us being able to drink in this town? Couple people dead. I mean, it's not happening that frequently. These guys are mobsters. I mean, yeah, I guess some buildings are getting blown up, but fuck it. We get to get sauce still. You have an instance now where the amount of violence is so shocking that people are like, I don't know if this is worth us being able to get tanked.
Yeah, it's Capone still has a plausible deniability that it's him causing this, though, because if you need to have a witness that
plausible, I know has to be the technical term for that, but it's not.
Well, if you need an alibi that you weren't at a crime scene and you were down in Miami,
yes.
Who's the most respectable person that you would want as a witness to who you were with?
Your wife?
A lawyer.
Oh, of course.
He has a sworn written affidavit from a lawyer that Al Capone was with him in Miami the entire day.
He was in Miami, but
I know,
again.
but how many lawyers do you think he was hanging out with on a certain specific day when a mass mob hit's going on in Chicago?
We're buddies.
It's all just a 100% setup. But yeah, these people they've realized that no matter how much they like booze, and also we're talking 1929. So we're talking the Depression is setting in. Everybody has a million more things to worry about. They're worrying about trying to buy bread for their family as opposed to just going out and buying booze. Also, we're coming to not the end, but sort of the writing on the wall of Prohibition going by the wayside sometime soon. So now you have to start looking at a post Prohibition world in Chicago that doesn't know how long this Great Depression's going on. Meanwhile, you have Al Capone, who's doing these outreach programs, who starts a soup kitchen in Chicago that
in response to the St. Valentine's Day massacre.
Yeah, well, that, and I mean, the Great Depression and everything like that. Where
Uncle Al's St. Valentine's Day soup kitchen.
He was always known for tipping super well and just trying to take care of people. The soup kitchen and everything else kind of went by the wayside. I believe they said that there was a news report that came out that the Capone family was spending about $1,000 a week in groceries as the rest of the world was starving.
Yeah.
So things weren't looking real good for Capone in that lens. And
it's definitely an eat the rich situation.
For sure. And he was the richest man that they could see. On that day, as Capone's in Miami, a couple days later, he gets summoned to testify in Chicago on these federal probation violations because he's picking up some things, but not everything. He has a doctor's note that says that he is too sick to go down and sit in front of the court.
I would love to come and testify in front of a bunch of people, but my tummy hurts.
He said that he had double pneumonia, and they had sent an investigator down to try to see how legitimate this double pneumonia was. They said that the investigator followed him to the horse track, to the lake to go fishing.
He was on the beach.
He was out at a nightclub. He went to dinner with his wife. All of these different places with double pneumonia. So they realized that this is pretty much bullshit.
Listen, fresh air. You know, you're not a doctor. You can't say what this man was trying to do to get better. March 29th, or sorry, not March 29th, but March of 1929, a group of Chicago businessmen or prominent figures, they've had enough of this shit. And so basically they actually get an appointment with President Hoover, who is needing to set an example, first of all, because new presidency and everything. Yeah. But they basically are like, Chicago's a war zone. They have control of everything. The mayor, the cops, the courts, all of it. You need to step in and you need to do something. And Hoover looks at this and he's like, oh yeah, shit, stuff, it does look to be pretty bad there. So
This is a softball. You're telling me that the federal government can't take this guy out?
exactly, yeah, this is a win for us. And so he's like, I can go ahead and kind of commission some people to come in and start working. The guys, I think they were known as the Secret Six, but there were more of them. They made the agreement like any additional outside of your guys' budget for this, we will go ahead and foot the bill for these federal agents being here, launching operations, things like that.
Yeah, well, we'll just write a check for anybody that you need.
So this is where you get, Elliot Ness, the Untouchables coming in. Also, kind of a crazy thing, the term Untouchables. So Untouchables were in a certain culture. It had been used. I want to say that it was Gandhi. Gandhi had said something or was known as like an untouchable because undesirable. Mm-hmm. And so
it was the Indian caste system, I believe.
Correct. And so that name was applied to Elliot Ness initially and his guys by, I believe, like Capone's outfit and everything because they were undesirable. The cops also knew them as that because they didn't want them to be there because those cops are all on the take. They're going to hurt their bottom line. At the very least, they're hurting their bottom line. At the worst, they're going to find out these guys are on the take and they're going to be prosecuted. So even all of the cops and everything looked at Elliot Ness and all these government guys as untouchables because they were undesirable. And then this kind of caught on, but then the media turned it on its head and said, you guys need to take this name because you guys can't be bought. You guys are untouchable to the corruption and use it in a positive.
Ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Ridiculous spin.
Still a fucking badass name.
Yeah. Yes, it is. I think it's Tracy Morgan and Bruce Willis in this stupid buddy cop comedy. I think it's called Cop Out. And Tracy Morgan describes these other cops as the unfuckables because nobody wants to deal with them.
Yeah.
May 1929, Capone ends up foiling yet another murder plot from Aiello. Two guys that we had talked about before, Albert Anselmi, John Scalise, and a third man named Joseph Ginta, were beaten with a bat and then shot. They were found days later in an abandoned car in Indiana. Now, supposedly part of this story goes, obviously these three were all three members of the Unione. Mm-hmm. So they were probably trying to collect that $50K. And Capone had this dinner downtown. I believe it was at their hotel for all of the guys. He told everybody to raise their glass, basically toasting all of his men. And all three of those guys, Scalise, Anselmi, and Ginta, were all there, I'm sure, to try to lay the hit out on Capone. They ended up brought on stage with Capone. Capone pulls out a baseball bat and proceeds to beat the ever-living shit out of these three guys.
So there's a couple different retellings, and of course, no one who was there is actually going to talk about it. So Frankie Rio, who was like Capone's bodyguard and everything, Capone being at this point probably rightfully so pretty paranoid, he kind of suspected, like you said, that what was it, Unione?
Unione is the
Unione. What was the Arello or?
Oh, Aiello?
Aiello. So he kind of suspected that he might be trying to get some guys on the inside. And so there were the three guys that you had named. Capone staged an argument with Frank Rio, like a pretty serious one, in order to try to get information and have him see if he could get kind of these guys to reach out to him. And so Frankie Rio found out that these three guys were plotting because they approached him about getting in on it. And so as they're doing this dinner, they said that they got, they waited through the dinner and everything like that. It was supposed to be this unifying dinner and everything. These guys didn't suspect that they were found out. I don't think they were looking to kill Capone during this instance because there were so many other people around.
Yeah.
Capone had figured out about it. And after they had gotten drunk and everyone had them tied to chairs and then beat the shit out of them and had them shot. Because it was kind of explaining, like, how would he be able to knock out three guys with a baseball bat without any of them trying to fight back or anything like that? And so it was that they had gotten held down, tied up. He beat the shit out of him. Then he had his guys execute him.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's It's all up to speculation because, like you said, there's not a soul.
Like,
that's
even the
going to
movie
talk
only
about it.
puts it into where he kills like one guy with the baseball bat and he just walks up behind him and does it. So, I mean, there's various retellings. Regardless, he found the plot. He killed the guys. They got found in another county or something.
Indiana.
In Indiana.
Which isn't too far outside of Chicago,
Yeah.
but at the same time, they were
Not some other state's problem.
very interesting just in this world that they live in. And Selmy and Scalise helped wipe out O'Banion. Mm-hmm. And now they were basically in cahoots to try to kill Capone. It was just the almighty dollar.
Well, and literally right after this, May 13th through the 16th, there's this first national organized crime summit.
CrimeCon. Organized CrimeCon.
CrimeCon. MobCon. So the result of this is the formation of what's known as the Syndicate. And this is put together by Capone's old mentor, Torrio, Lucky Luciano, and Meyer Lansky are kind of the three main guys that are going to be leading up this syndicate. They're not the only three guys there. This is a collection of the Chicago outfit, other mobsters from Chicago, New Jersey, New York. I want to say there was probably some Pennsylvania. There were some other places throughout the country where this was.
Buffalo,
Detroit.
Kansas City, St. Louis.
Detroit was one of them too. So they are pretty much at this point, especially coming off the St. Valentine's Day massacre, they're like, there's too much visibility. There's too much awareness of what we're trying to do. We only succeed if no one's looking at us or looking too closely at us. So Capone, in whatever way this occurs, is basically giving a message and saying, hey, there's a lot of heat on you, and there's probably some people here that think it's much easier if you just disappear instead of kind of laying low, because then you're just not a problem anymore. If you're gone fully, then you're gone. I want to say Torrio, I have to imagine, probably kind of stepped in and told Capone, listen, you need to disappear for a little while, and not just in a sense of maybe going away somewhere where you can be found. You probably need to go take a break somewhere where you're going to be protected.
It's not just Chicago you got to worry about. There's a lot of guys in New York that
Because guess what? If you're drawing eyes, you have the federal government now stepping in. You think that that's not going to tie back to other places in New York? You were getting some of your booze shipments from New York.
You don't think that once they get you, they're going to have a penchant for taking down.
Do you ever wonder why no one else who's, none of these other outfits who've been in existence much longer than you have ever killed 7 people in one hit? It's because it draws a lot of attention, you idiot. So the same day that this thing ends, Capone goes up to Pennsylvania. I think it's Philly or somewhere right outside Philly. And he ends up going and taking in a movie with a couple of his bodyguards or one of his bodyguards. And as he comes out, he's approached and arrested for having a concealed weapon by 2 cops. So he is arrested. He is then taken, processed, he's tried, and he's sentenced to a year. This all occurs within a span of 16 hours. Now
Wow, that's a justice system at work.
For him to basically come out of this conference being told, you need to go away somewhere, going straight up to Pennsylvania, finding 2 cops who he's just going to be like, oh, hey, I'm just coming out of theater. Lucky you guys are here. Here, I'm holding a gun. Better arrest me. Get in front of a judge who is going to rocket through that sentencing so quickly and put him in a prison where the mob in that area has ties and can make it very comfortable for him and allow him to continue operating the Chicago outfit from relative safety. I don't think that all just comes together in the moment. This sounds like someone who was at this conference had an idea, could have been Torrio, basically called up somebody, a judge or something, said, this is where you're going to find him. He's going to come up there. He's going to have a gun. He's going to be in on it, so don't expect him to be surprised. This is what you're going to do.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, you might be asking yourself why Torrio's back since he retired to Italy. Some guy named Benito Mussolini came to power and
started some shit.
Fascism to Italy, and the fascism ended up chasing the Sicilian mob back to the United States. That's why Torrio's back. I don't really have a hard time believing that this was something to where it was mostly Capone's idea, because just the order of events that happened, the way that it happens, Everybody pretty much knew that something was weird here because, one, Capone was arrested for carrying a concealed weapon. Capone was never known to carry a weapon himself. So for him to have a weapon on himself, that would be pretty weird. The other thing is Capone pled guilty. Capone was known to just walk around with $50,000 on him just in case a card game broke out and he wanted to lose money.
Track.
Yep. So he had enough money to be able to just plea not guilty, post bail, and just never go back to Philadelphia again. He has all of these different options. I do believe that $50,000 is more than enough to pay off 2 policemen and then anybody at the prison or the jail to get you in front of a judge as fast as humanly possible to be able to start your vacation. I think that that's enough money for him to realize that the heat's on him and even the mob wants him dead, that he could have walked himself into this prison.
I do too. The reason I believe it was organized is because I don't think he would have went in there in front of a judge without a lawyer. And I think because he had a lawyer that knew what was going on present at that point so quickly.
In 16 hours.
In 16 hours, a lawyer that they knew could get everything through, that was going to plead guilty, that was going to say all the right things and make sure he only got that year-long sentence. I just feel like there had to be some planning behind that.
Yeah, potentially, for sure.
He had enough money again. He had enough money to, even if he did this, hey, we're going to talk to the judge, find 2 cops and have them arrest you, make sure they do it the right way.
Yeah.
He could have just bribed those cops and got in front of the right judge.
Yeah, well, we don't know exactly how it happened, but all that's definitely more than probable.
So he goes into a state prison, right? Not federal prison.
Eastern State Penitentiary. He's supposed to be there for a year. He ends up spending 9 months on good behavior. He's protected from pretty much anybody that's trying to knock him off. And during this whole entire time, he is so set up. I don't remember if it was this time. I'm pretty sure it was, where he calls home to have May send him his bed.
Yep.
He has just run to the place. I think you were talking about it earlier. He's making calls from the warden's office.
Yeah, he's basically serving what would be like a working vacation.
Yep.
And in a luxury suite, he's got it's a prison cell, of course, with bars, but he's got his polished mahogany furniture. He's got his record player to be able to play his music and everything. His cell is just kind of left open. He's able to kind of wander and everything. The other prisoners loved him because he would turn his music up loud enough that everybody in the block could hear it. He, like you just kind of alluded to, whenever he needed to make those long-distance phone calls to be able to reach out to either the family members or the other family members, he would just call from the warden's office and be able to run the outfit from where he was. And I wonder how that conversation happened. Was it just like he told one of the guards passing by his cell, he's like, I need to make a phone call. He's like, all right, come with me. They go up, knock on the warden's door. Who is it? Mr. Capone needs to make a phone call. As they walk in, the warden just goes, all right, and gets up and just, I'm going to take a break. Walks out of the office and just, Capone sits himself in the warden's chair, kicks his feet up, pulls the phone over and starts
Opens up the warden's booze, has himself a drink while he's making the phone call.
Has his food brought to him.
Probably. Yeah, you know that everybody along those situations definitely has a $100 bill in their palm. Mm-hmm. That was just his currency. So he's supposed to get out 9 months later to the day. It was
good behavior.
He was a model inmate.
Always paid on time.
So on the day of his release, the media and everybody is huddling around Eastern State Penitentiary.
Not just the media.
More than the media.
There's a few armed individuals there as well.
Everybody's sitting there waiting. Everybody wants a little chunk. They want the first interview of Capone as he gets out of prison.
Or to record him getting shot.
Yep, either or. They end up waiting there all day long. Capone never comes out. Eventually the warden comes out and he's like, what's everybody doing here? And they said, we're waiting for Capone to get out. He goes, he's already gone. I don't know what to tell you. He was released.
He said something about we stuck one in your eye. The big guy's already gone.
Yeah, he was.
It's like, aren't you the guy that was supposed to, don't you run this place?
Shouldn't you want to keep him in here for as long as possible?
You're very happy. That's a lot of jewelry. It's a nice ring and a nice watch.
So as Chris was talking about earlier, 1929 presidential election just takes place and it sees Herbert Hoover come into power. He needed a win because, again, we're headlong headed to the Great Recession or the Great Depression. He needs a win. Prohibition Enforcement Agency had struck a deal, as Chris was talking about, with these legit businesses to take down Capone. They fund partially the force known as the Untouchables that Chris was talking about, led by Elliot Ness. The Untouchables were important in a role to where they were the ones that were taking down Capone's breweries. And as they were recording all of these violations of the Volstead Act that they were building a case to try to take to court.
It was like trying to, there's laws now that are considered like RICO, so like racketeering. I don't know what all of it stands for, but what RICO allows you to do in a nutshell is you're able to find guilty parties as co-conspirators that took place or served a key function. So in essence, like with Capone, how nothing's in his name, nothing can be tied to him, anything like that. If they can find a way to tie him to this bootlegging or any of the other illegal acts, even if he wasn't doing them himself, if he was profiting or somehow in charge of these things, they could get him.
Guilty by association.
So this is kind of the precursor to RICO. They're just looking for any way that they can get him on any type of charges. And like Adam said, Elliot Ness kind of focused more so on the prohibition enforcement of taking down the breweries, where you had all these other people trying to figure out ways to take Capone down. One thing that kind of shed some light and opened up a door was that while Al Capone was in prison, Ralph Capone, who did have a bank account and liked to spend just as much as Al did, that stuff was easy to tie back to him because he did spend stuff out of his bank account. He did pay for stuff with a check, and all this stuff was in his name. So they were able to get Ralph on tax evasion.
Yeah. In 1927, SCOTUS rules that all income, even illegal income, was subject to taxation by the government. So those bastards in those robes went ahead and tied the hands of every criminal in the United States by saying, illegal or not, you need to declare this. And if you declare illegal money, all we do is put your name on a list to come arrest you for profiting off of illegal activity.
Things that are illegal, exactly.
Yeah. This is the Marijuana Stamp Act that you had to go purchase a stamp to sell marijuana, but the only way that you could get the stamp was to prove that you had the marijuana already. Mm-hmm. It's so ridiculous. But again, they're trying to cut down on people making illegal money.
They're doing this. They're forming all this just like targeted to take down Capone.
Pretty much. So yeah, as you were talking about, 1930, Al's brother Ralph ends up getting convicted on tax evasion. He's sentenced to 18 months in prison. Meanwhile, while his trial is going on, this Treasury Department agent named Frank J. Wilson is digging so deep into Capone's books. They're trying to find anything that they can, any initials on a payment, any checks or anything like that.
This nerd gets off on looking through ledgers and looking through data and eventually finds this guy. I don't know if this guy is the bookkeeper or he's got the key to the bookkeeper.
Yeah, so what he ends up finding that was just the most brilliant stroke of luck. He's digging through this file cabinet. He finds these two ledgers that are sitting in the back that have red corners on them. Mm-hmm. And he opens up these ledgers and he's looking through and he's seeing all of these names and all of these assumed names and aliases that Capone has used.
Yeah, a coding system.
He can't quite figure it out. But he knows, okay, this has to be something important. Where did these come from? These actually came from a raid on the Hawthorne Hotel when they took down the gambling operation in Cicero.
So he can see where the money's coming from. He can see what it's for because it's listing out faro, poker, craps, but it's not listing who's making the money off of this. So you can tell money's being made. You can tell it's going somewhere, but you don't know where it's going or who it's going to.
And then there's the initials AC on a few pages. So what he does is he goes back to this Hawthorne raid. He finds out what was considered the cashier of the operation was. His name was Fred Reese. He gets a little dirt on Fred Reese and finds out that he doesn't like creepy crawlies and bugs and dirty situations. So what he does is when he brings in Fred Reese, he says, hey, we have a holding cell here for you. If you want to play ball with us, I can work on your accommodations. I can get you a hotel, something to stay in. Prior to that happening, Wilson asked the people at the jail to go find the nastiest, most disgusting bed.
It wasn't even a jail. It was a holding cell that was like separate. It wasn't at the actual jail because that's what made him so nervous. It was still someplace.
I wonder if it was at the sheriff's office.
Could have been like a transfer station too. And so took him and basically put in, like you said, bed bug ridden mattress, all of this stuff. And
4 days.
Yes. Stuck Reese in here. And 48 hours in this cell, Reese was like, "Excuse me, sir. I'd like to talk now."
Yeah. He's supposed to be there 4 days. He makes it 48 hours. And what he does is he turns over this person named Leslie Shumway, who was the accountant who understood all of the books and every single thing that Capone was running in his empire.
No, when Capone comes back, I think it's around like March 17th of 1930, he returns to Chicago basically branded as public enemy number one. Shit's come to light since he's been there. He hasn't been there to hold his little pasta cooking press conferences and everything. So all the information that's come out about him and his operation, all the stuff the feds have discovered, all the raids that have been happening have been tied back to the outfit and to Capone. So he doesn't really come back to a friendly environment.
No, but to finish up a through line here, October 30th of that year, Capone hitman finally ice yellow. He was getting into a cab in Chicago. I don't know why in the world he thought Chicago was a safe place for him. They found at least 13 bullet holes in him. Mm-hmm. So he had hellfire rain down from, I believe it was the second story of the adjacent building.
Yeah, so the building across the street, as soon as he's out, they open up with machine gun fire. They said he was hit like 13 times. Even being hit 13 times, he's able to make it around the building. And as he turns the corner, because they had the whole place boxed in, on a third floor in that building overlooking the area where he had turned the corner, there's another group with machine guns and they just mow him down.
Oh my God.
I don't know how much further he's making it even around that corner with 13 holes in him, but...
No, and I mean, how
the fuck are you walking after being shot 13 times?
That's my thought is 13 bullet holes in you for you to still be moving.
How did none of those hit your head or your heart?
Yeah, that's
again, pray and spray.
Pretty much. In 1930, after Ralph's trial ends up happening, Capone catches wind of this investigation into his finances, and his lawyers kind of start getting a little hot under the collar. He has one specific lawyer that ends up sending a letter to the tax commission, and it admits that Capone made about $50,000 in 1928 and took home about $100,000 in 1929. He offered basically to make this blanket payment of back taxes, but it was, I want to say it was something like $3 million.
It was basically like,
to wipe out all of the tax. I'm going
to pay out the back taxes with a little bit extra on top to sweeten the pot.
Well, I think it was like blanket for the entire mob scene in Chicago.
The entire outfit in
Pretty
Chicago.
Much. Yeah, like he was trying to basically lob them as much as he could.
So June 5th, I think, is when he's indicted by the federal grand jury on 22 counts of evasion.
That's 31.
31.
So, yeah, this offer comes through, and the tax commission's like, no, we have so much on you. We don't need your money. We want to take you down. We want to cut the head off the snake.
Well, there was a plea deal, I think, that was offered. So the guys that he hired, because he knew this is the route they were going with this whole tax situation, he hired a bunch of tax lawyers. He didn't really hire, like, court battle lawyers that are going to go to trial. No. It was everything that he needed to do prior to trial to not even have to go to trial.
Well, yeah, there's this waterfall effect that happens March 13th of 31. Capone gets indicted by the secret grand jury of income tax evasion for 1924. This is what I was talking about earlier. How can you be indicted for a crime that happened 3 years prior to the SCOTUS ruling saying that all illegal funds are taxable as well?
You can be the guy that ordered the hit of 7 people and have killed a bunch of other people. I get what you're saying.
But that's not what you're indicted on. I'm not trying to make a case that he was innocent. I'm just saying.
What you're saying from a technical standpoint of rule of the law and everything like that. Yes, you are correct. If there is a precedent, it should only take place from when that law is put into place going forward. At the same time, guess what? They have not been able to get this guy on anything else, and they know for a fact what they need to do to get him. I would imagine, too, if they're looking at this and they're saying to themselves, okay, we got him out for a year. He was in prison. Nothing really changed. He was able to run the entire operation from prison. We can't allow that to happen again.
Yeah.
We have to put him back into a prison because keeping him out is not an option. So we have to try to get him on whatever we can for the maximum amount of time so we can put him someplace where he can't keep running this.
Yeah, that's very true. And on June 5th, he gets indicted on 22 more counts.
Okay, so that's the 22 counts that I was talking about.
He is released on bail for that. Then he's indicted a third time on 5,000 violations of the Volstead Act.
Correct, because that's all the stuff that had been compiled by Ness and everything, because they're able to start tying all this stuff together.
He sees the writing on the wall. He ends up, his lawyers get together with the prosecutor. They decide on a 2.5-year plea for him to plead guilty. This is a plea deal that's signed, sealed, delivered, and Capone is tap dancing on clouds knowing that he's about to do 2.5 years in a federal institution. He starts talking about this to the media.
He's also 32 years old.
Yeah.
In his mind, all he's thinking of, I had a year last time. I got out in 9 months. 2.5 years. They're going to send me to Leavenworth. My brother's already in there. He'll already have something established. I can be comfortable in Leavenworth.
20 months maybe I'm going to do out of this whole thing.
And so as this 2.5-year plea deal comes across the judge looks at this thing, and with these types of, I don't know what arraignment or something like that, when you're going to the judge like this is prior to a jury trial or anything, the judge looks at this plea deal. Regardless if this thing's been agreed upon by both parties, the judge looks at this and because he's the one making the judgment, he looks at this and he's like, yeah, we're not doing this.
I think this is a pretty common misconception. Just because a plea deal is signed doesn't mean that a judge ever has to accept it.
Yes.
If the terms are too light, if they're too heavy, or
if the judge is looking to do something, yeah.
Well, and this happens on July 30th, 1931, that Wilkerson refuses the deal. Then the prosecution has to go back and say, well, does Capone want to re-enter a plea? And he, of course, says not guilty at that point in time because pleading guilty is not going to do anything.
And the judge is like, do you want to change? He allows him. He's like, do you want to go ahead and change because you just said you were guilty and that's why you're going to accept the plea? You still want to do this? Capone's like, well, no, I'm not guilty on this. He's like, fantastic, we're going to trial.
And this becomes something pretty interesting to me because the trial for tax evasion takes precedent over all those Volstead Act trials.
It's whatever they can get it the highest on.
Well, the reason for it was because no prosecutor ever wants to lose a case. And if you're going to bring a case against Al Capone that's going to be tried in public by citizens, they're probably going to be far less likely to get a guilty verdict on him selling booze to people.
I like that. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. What are these people not like? Now, again, we're Great Depression.
Yeah, we're still 31's definitely we're still in it.
So people are struggling financially. If you go to those people and you say, this guy's been selling booze and everything, people are like, people will do anything to make money right now. People like alcohol because it helps them forget what's going on right now. Or you say, this guy has been making all of this money and hasn't been paying anything back and hasn't been giving any of that money to the government, who in turn couldn't turn around and use that money for relief programs or anything. If you tell people and make it seem like this guy's taking money away from them, again, like you said, much less likely to give this guy, to let this guy off.
There's also the caveat here that tax evasion can only be done by a certain population because you had to make a minimum amount of money to pay taxes to the government.
Yeah, like taxes were only paid by an upper echelon of people that made enough money to be taxable.
So there's a good chance that most of the people in the jury may not be making enough money to be forced to pay taxes. So now if they see somebody who's making that much more money than them and is refusing to pay money, it's going to look a lot worse.
Like you have enough money that you should be able to pay this.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, because it's going to go to a jury trial, all of a sudden you now have this pool of jurors that's been picked, but you have this organization that can pretty much do still kind of whatever it wants. And you have all of these jurors their names being released and everything are being found out. And the outfits people are going, they're threatening them, they're bribing them, anything that they can do to get enough of these people that when it comes down to, regardless of what evidence is presented, to give that not guilty, you're hoping to get Capone off that way.
Yeah, there's people that are coming out of the gallery, I forgot the word for it, that are saying, I don't work for the mob, but I like money, and I can tell you the last 6 jurors that they picked to go on trial that are going to walk out. I'll give you guys everybody that they chose inside the courtroom that are going to be these that are going to sit on the jury, and as they go through and they bribe and threaten and basically get the entire jury on their side, Capone's not worried about this at all. Capone isn't even thinking of like, hey, I should probably bring on some trial representation instead of just these tax lawyers, because now the tax lawyers are kind of useless. I need somebody that knows how to get inside of a courtroom and fight.
But I don't.
Yeah, but I don't,
because it's not even going to matter what ends up happening. They can have all the evidence in the world. My lawyers could completely shit the bed on this, but it's not going to change the minds of these people whose minds can't be changed because we've either threatened them or coerced them or paid them. My favorite thing about this entire story, possibly, as the trial begins, Judge Wilkerson ends up getting wind of this happening and goes and swaps the jury with another trial that's going on.
Yeah, he gets a tip from somebody that'll come into the story later.
And as he switches out this jury, the jury that was picked for Capone's trial was made up of a lot of like metropolitan people, like from city, urban Chicago and everything. You now have this jury that's made up of people that are more rural and everything, who are much less likely to buy in to the big city, kind of probably look at these people a little bit more like, oh, like you're even richer than the people that we're used to. Like we definitely don't have any sympathy or like ability to relate to you.
Well, and then we're also going to sequester them together so you guys can't get to them at all.
They're all going to be staying for the entirety of the trial in a guarded hotel.
There had to have been a little forethought coming into this, because the chances of another federal trial that would have another federal jury to be able to swap out on that exact same day. I don't know what the docket looked like back then, but I have a feeling that they probably wouldn't be running 2 concurrent federal trials unless they were worried about something like this.
I want to say it was, I'm going to look it up what the other trial was.
Okay. So yeah, this is all going pretty poorly during the trial for Capone. He has an outburst in court. He ends up catching another sentence for contempt during this point in time because he sees where this is heading. Now, I was kind of talking about the sham trial earlier, and I can admit that this had to happen. But a lot of these counts that they're bringing up, his defense is saying, well, this wasn't a law yet. You can't be trying to hang my guy on something that happened outside. The statute of limitations is up. Judge Wilkerson, who's also the same judge that put Ralph away, was pretty privy to this game, and he knew how to kind of work his way around being able to use some things, being able to use other things. The letter that the lawyers had written about the money that Capone had claimed, the $50,000 and the $100,000, is admitted into evidence when it probably wouldn't stand up to the scrutiny to be entered into the trial nowadays.
So it doesn't say what case it was. It just says that Judge Jesus, it's late in the podcast. Wilkerson ordered the bailiff to switch the entire prospective jury panel with a panel that had just been assigned to another judge in the same building.
Okay, so maybe it wasn't even a trial that had started. They had just already had a second jury that was picked for something else. That makes some sense. October 31st, Capone is convicted on 5 counts of tax evasion, sentenced to 11 years. He thought that the maximum that he was going to be getting was like 5 at most. He ends up getting 11 years. He takes
10 years in federal prison and then 1 year in a county jail.
For the contempt charge.
Yeah.
He gets ordered to pay $50,000 in a fine. He has to pay all of the court costs and then any owed taxes. So he's under the gun. He was looking at having to pay back $215,000 on over $1 million in earnings. And then they tacked interest on top of that. So again, that's just all pocket change. He's looking at this 11 years now as still a fairly young man and thinking, it'll be all right. I'll be able to ride this out.
I'll have my comfort. I'll still be able to operate.
Yeah, he gets swept away to an Atlanta federal penitentiary in May of 1932. And by all accounts, he enjoyed his time in Atlanta before he ends up in another institution. They said in Atlanta it was close enough. It was in the exact same time zone as, I guess it still is in the same time zone as Chicago. It was an easy trip for his family to come down and spend time with him. He had a lot of the creature comforts.
He also still had his house in Miami.
Yep.
So he had purchased a house in Miami so he could have his family down there as well. And I
think
would
it was
expect that
an
he would
island.
probably have his family down there just from a safety standpoint.
Yeah.
Of not having his family not protected by him in Chicago.
You don't want the Capones up there. Meanwhile, while this is happening, the first time he went into jail, Torrio came out of retirement and went ahead and looked after things. Now there's somebody else that was directly under him that's taking care of things. But in Atlanta, he's still able to make the phone calls and still able to start calling the shots. Then we have another previous episode that we had done as we introduce the prison on the Rock. The Rock.
Hold on real quick, because that's 34, right?
Yep.
February of 1933, Prohibition is repealed.
Oh, yeah.
So now the most lucrative part of the outfit, that's now a non-factor. Booze is now legal again. I'm sure there's still some ownership of the breweries and things like that are going to keep making money. But at the same time, you're not going to be able to jack the prices up. That $5 barrel of beer, you're just going to be able to go back to selling it for $10.
And they said at a point in time, I want to say it was between 27 and 29, that the Chicago outfit was making about $107 million yearly off of all of this. There were claims that Capone was, by today's standards, a billionaire. I find it a little tough to believe that with as much money as they were paying for protection.
So you said $107 million a year?
Yeah.
So $35 million of that a year is going toward bribes.
Plus, you're breaking that up in between everybody else that's on the payroll. He might take home 7 or 8 million, which again would be 50, 60 million, somewhere around there in that neighborhood. At the same time, he's only running this for a very short period of time, really.
They said there were between 600 and 700 people in various capacities on the payroll of the outfit.
A lot of mouths to feed.
Yep. All right. August 18th, 1934. Capone is put on a train in the middle of the night, bound for the West Coast. Where is Capone going?
Oh, you can't take the train all the way there.
Nope.
Eventually, there's going to have to be a boat involved.
Welcome to the Rock.
Yeah, to drop him out on newly opened Alcatraz. While he was in Atlanta, one of the first things that he finds out is that he has syphilis. That he has.
Does he find out he still has syphilis?
Yeah, I mean, they tell him he has syphilis, and it is now moved into where it's something called neurosyphilis.
He had to have known he had regular old run-of-the-mill syphilis, because that was the explanation that eventually had to be provided to him about his kids, about Sonny's hearing loss.
Yeah.
At a certain point, Capone is probably just thinking like, oh, so this is just living life. Syphilis ain't bad. But then once the neurodegenerative stuff starts happening and everything like that, he probably finds out from that doctor, and he's like, you have neurosyphilis. He's like, yeah, I know I have syphilis. He's like, no, you have neurosyphilis. He's like, doc, you're saying a word before the syphilis. I'm well aware of the syphilis. He's like, it's in your brain.
Somebody fucked my brain?
What do you mean? No, doc, it's down here in my dick. Syphilis is in, this is where I got the syphilis. This is where the syphilis is. He's like, no, it travels up and it will start messing with your brain. He's like, did not know that.
What kind of a doctor are you?
How do you know so much about syphilis?
Do you have it too? His time on Alcatraz kind of levels the playing field.
He is treated like a bitch.
Yeah, he's a big shot in Atlanta. He's Al Capone. And then when you get shipped off to Alcatraz, where you got guys like Creepy Carpus that have been taken down there. Pretty Boy Floyd, I believe, is also there, or Babyface Nelson.
We talked about it. Go back and listen to the Alcatraz episode. It's awesome. The worst of the worst were sent to Alcatraz, the island prison, a mile from any place else. This is the inescapable rock. You put Al Capone in there, and it's kind of like what I imagine it is for like a pedophile in prison. And it is, what are you here for? And then there's just a target on your ass. Now, for him, it's, well, you're Al Capone. How long are you here for? I'm here for like, at that point, what would it have been, like 9 years, 10 years?
Yeah, 7,
because he wasn't
somewhere
in
around there.
Atlanta very long. But everyone's looking at him as like, oh, Princess here is only here for 11 years, must not have done something that bad. And you have all of the worst who, guess what? They don't give a fuck. You don't have the pull here. You can't make their life more comfortable. And because you can't make their life more comfortable, they're going to make your life uncomfortable.
Yeah, and he did have, I believe it was one guard that came with him, one kind of bodyguard that was also shipped there with him. Couldn't be there all the time. June 23rd, 1936, Capone ends up being stabbed by a fellow inmate.
Yeah.
Not even like a guy of note or a mass murderer, just somebody else who was in there for a life sentence that felt like they could take a run at Capone.
He was in the prison laundry or something like that. It was a pair of fabric shears. The guy ends up stabbing him in the hands, got in his back and his stomach. And they're just like, it was like superficial wounds and everything. Yeah. He was in the hospital wing for a little bit.
He also somehow talks the guards into being able to start a band.
He becomes a very muted, non-bravado-ish version of himself because he realizes he's not safe here. He has no power here. And so he legitimately is just like, I kind of need to just not put a toe out of line and try to speed up this process of getting the fuck out of here. And ends up, behaving well enough that they're like, yeah, fuck it. It'd probably be kind of funny to see Al Capone play an instrument and lead a prison band. So does he play like the banjo or something?
Yeah, it's something stupid. It's a bad instrument. I think at the same time, the reason why there's a shift in his personality is this neurosyphilis. Now that he knows that it's a thing that it somehow got to his brain, I think it's starting to take a real toll on him.
Yeah, he's going through periods where he's not his normal personality. He's very tired. He's very lethargic. And then he'll have times when he's very lucid, but he is definitely not in control of this. He's just kind of at the whim of whatever this thing is doing when it's eating his brain. It's eating his brain.
I think he ends up spending the last year of his imprisonment in Alcatraz in the hospital wing. So he's pretty down. He would end up being shipped off from Alcatraz to Terminal Island so he could get that year of contempt taken care of. Mm-hmm. He didn't have to do the contempt charge.
Sounds like a beautiful place. Probably lots of turtles.
Yeah, Terminal doesn't make me think of a beautiful place.
Do you say terminal or turtle?
Terminal.
Oh, I thought you said Turtle Island.
No, this ain't Hawaii. I don't think there's a lot of turtles in California.
Oh, yeah, Terminal sounds way worse. Kind of fitting, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He ends up being paroled November 16th, 1939, and he's released to Johns Hopkins Medical Facility in Baltimore. You smoke weed with Johnny Hopkins. Johnny Hopkins and Sloan Kettering.
They were blazing that shit up every day. Fun thing about Johns Hopkins is they're like, what's his name? This is Al Brown. Fuck it is. That's Al Capone. Get the fuck out. And Johns Hopkins is like, we ain't dealing with this shit. So they end up refusing to treat him, and they end up taking him to, have it written down somewhere. Oh, it's another Baltimore hospital. I can't remember the exact name. They're, willing to actually treat him.
Brad Hopkins?
Yeah, it was Brad Hopkins Hospital. And he feels gracious enough that they treated him that he actually donates 2, I believe, Japanese blossom cherry trees or something like that to them, which there's still one of them there today?
I believe so, yeah.
So 1942, he's actually one of the first patients to be treated by mass-produced penicillin. Now,
crazy.
This doesn't do anything. It's already too far gone at this point, but this allows him to get additional years. So this basically helps to kind of abate the symptoms and actually slow down the neurosyphilis. To slow down.
There might have been a little interesting retribution November 8th, 1939, because this is after he's been released, and this was 8 days before he was released. So, yeah, interesting. 8 days before he was released, one of his former business associates and pretty close friends, his name was Fred O'Hare. Fred O'Hare turned state's evidence on Capone, and then Fred O'Hare was the guy that gave the judge the tip about the jury. He was the one that let the judge know that the jury was completely tainted. So not only did he
Did such a great job that they named the airport after him.
is that
No, God,
maybe
no,
not.
that
I don't
can't
know.
be.
Shit. We just talked about how corrupt Chicago is. That's not out of the realm of possibility.
I mean, you're the guy that helped take down Capone. Maybe you get something named after you.
Yeah. November 8th, 1939, O'Hare is shot and killed in his car. So
Who would have saw it coming?
yeah, this feels like
Not
maybe
O'Hare.
the final retribution that Capone could have gotten on him. Capone ends up moving down to Miami, where he pretty much spends the rest of his life. He's down there. They said at one point in time, it was either a doctor or a psychologist who'd ruled that he had the mental capacity or the emotional capacity of like a 12-year-old.
Yeah, in 1946, they did an evaluation on him, and he had the mentality of a 12-year-old, which means that he was just laughing at boob jokes and farts and stuff like that.
Yeah, which, good hang.
Yeah.
He's not looking
If you
to
like hanging with 12-year-olds, I guess.
kill too much anymore.
I hang with a 6-year-old all the time, and I can tell you that they say some crazy shit.
I've heard you laugh at a fart joke.
Yes. You try to hear the sound of a laughing child after a fart and not join.
That's pure joy. So he kind of just spends his time hanging out in Miami. He likes fishing still. He goes fishing. He has the mentality of a 12-year-old. So anything a 12-year-old's going to go like to do, he's out there doing it.
They're taking him out to eat every now and then. He's ordering dino nuggies and fries. They have to put a lid on his drink and everything. It doesn't take long after this diagnosis because January 21st, 1947 rolls around and he has a stroke. And he recovers. The timing on this when they were explaining it is kind of weird because they're like, he had a stroke on January 21st, but he like started to recover really well from the stroke until January 25th when he died of heart failure.
So he put together 10 good hours? What?
Yeah.
What in the hell? How does that happen?
I mean, like 4 days, but at the same time, they're like, yeah, he was really on the mend and he's dead.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a little bit crazy that he had just celebrated his birthday on January 17th. So he was newly 47 years old. Or 48 years old. He was newly 48 years old. Does it do anything for you to think about Al Capone outliving Hitler? Or do you...
I mean, I'd rather have Capone live longer than Hitler.
Yeah, but just as far as like a timing sync up that Hitler died before
What's
Capone?
probably crazy is that thinking about like the dates that he was getting out and everything. So he's released in like 1939.
Yep.
It's already kind of wearing on his brain. But that's him getting out during the kickoff of World War II. And he is watching World War II while declining with neurosyphilis into a 12-year-old to where at one point he's just like, oh, airplanes.
He had to have flown on an airplane, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure he did.
Probably. Well, going down to Miami, that drive would suck.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you got to be taking a train or something like that, I would imagine.
I've always kind of thought, and I guess it was prior to learning more about Capone, I didn't realize that he had such a run after prison. I thought that his story kind of ended with prison and he died in prison.
Yeah, I didn't. And here's the thing, too. You would think that because technically it wasn't Al Capone that came out of prison.
No.
Al Capone never became Al Capone again after he came out of prison. He was a civilian at that point. He didn't have the capacity. I think the murder of O'Hare, I think what that probably was, I don't think Capone, I mean, if they found out who did that, I don't even know if Capone would have been able to find out that that was O'Hare. I think that was probably something that the outfit found out about, and they were just like, in honor of Capone, we're going to take out this guy. Someone probably after he got out told him, be like, we found the guy that did it. We've gone ahead and taken care of him. And he just looked at him. He's like, you took care of what? He's like, the guy that, when your trial. What trial? I rode on a train. They're like, okay, boss, we're going to head back to Chicago now.
They also had like a pension system. I want to say that he was getting something in the neighborhood of like $600 a week.
Yeah.
That they were just paying him as like out of his 401k or something crazy like that. But the amount of money that he had at the time to think that they were still paying him a salary.
Yeah, he had to have so much money squirreled away, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the place that they lived in Miami was like his own island.
kind of his legacy, if you will. Well, legacy being the most well-known, mobster and everything. His wife ended up moving out of the house with their son. I want to say the son ended up having a life completely away from a life of crime or anything. The only time he ever ran into any trouble with the law was he got popped for stealing, I believe, a couple bottles of aspirin. And when he went in front of the judge, he goes, I guess everybody's got a little larceny in them. Other than that, I think his son changed his name, moved out west. He has 4 daughters. He died. I want to say she died in his wife died in maybe like the 60s. The son died in maybe like the 80s or the 90s. But he had 4 daughters, and the daughters had a bunch of Capone stuff that they had like auctioned off and everything to like all these like mob museums. I guess if you could call it a positive note, Capone did have a positive impact. I'm not sure if it was just in Chicago or on society as a whole, but the guy did help introduce expiration dates on milk bottles. Did you know that?
He had a family member or two that had gotten sick.
A niece who'd gotten sick, and so him and his brother had pushed because they had so much pull in like the council and like whatever you would consider the FDA version in Chicago or something like that.
Nobody's trying to die over milk.
Correct. So got the expiration dates on milk bottles, which was probably the best thing you can say he did for society. And one other cool fact I thought was awesome is, so did you know at this point in history, the president was only able to spend up to $750 on a vehicle?
What?
Yeah, some weird thing about congressional spending or something like that. The armored car that he had, that Capone had made, which was like a custom Cadillac, I think it had 3,000 pounds of additional steel plating placed on it, bulletproof windows. The back window could actually go down so guys could fire out the back at pursuers.
It also had gun ports in it.
Correct, which would make a perfect presidential vehicle, which is why they impounded it, and then it was used to transport the president at that point.
They didn't just hold it until the Pope came into town. That was the Pope mobile.
I mean, it might have switched and everything, but can you imagine being the guys that were like, yeah, we impounded it, so we need to make this, this is going to be the president's. We should probably go through this entire car very, very carefully to see what's in this thing. You probably found some wild shit in that car.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no condoms, I'm sure, but
Nope.
There was probably booze shoved underneath the floorboards.
Just a lot of pamphlets on what to do and to deal with neurosyphilis.
They open up the glove compartment, and it's just ammunition spilling out everywhere. Like, oh, God.
Makes sense.
He was ready.
Tommy guns hidden in every fucking nook and cranny.
Yeah, his legacy is something to where it's, for me, when I look at the story and I see kind of an immigrant story in a way that I don't think people would typically look at it, but as far as success in a field goes, for him to be, what would that be? Is that first generation immigrant? I mean, technically,
Yeah,
it
first
wasn't an
generation
immigrant.
American. He
It
is.
was first generation family. For him to go from being an immigrant barber's son to being the most notorious mobster ever is pretty interesting.
Everybody we've talked about that raises to a certain level, how many of them have we talked about that have started out with a leg up?
Yeah.
They've always built them, and bad and good. Most of the time bad.
Not a field that you want to excel in, but he excelled in a city that he didn't grow up in and made it to the point where the federal government had to intervene to be able to get this guy.
For a long period of time.
And couldn't even get him for really anything that he was famous for.
Yeah.
Which now I think it becomes the most famous fact about Al Capone is that he was arrested for tax evasion.
I had an intense moment of pride last night as I was doing my notes. So Katie had asked me and she was like, hey, what are you guys doing this week? And I was like, we're doing Al Capone. She's like, he had syphilis, right? And I just looked at her and I was like, oh my God. She's like, yeah, I thought everyone knows that. And I was like, no, not everyone knows that. And I'm so proud that you do.
Yeah.
But that goes to show you that Capone's legacy isn't always about the bootlegging or anything like that. Sometimes the thing that people know about him is that he had syphilis.
He had an STI.
So neurosyphilis and tax evasion are kind of his two legacies, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, which is easier to explain than the untold death that he brought to his city in order to keep mayors in power and to be able to keep running his organization.
Why do you think this guy was so cranky? I don't know. He had a leaky dick his whole life. It probably put him in a bad mood.
That's why he was so angry.
Mm-hmm. All right, man. You got anything else?
No, I'm glad we made it back to another organized crime episode.
I think we covered Al from the top of his head to the tip of his leaky dick, and I think that's pretty comprehensive.
That's all we needed.
All right. Well, hope you guys enjoyed the episode. You guys got a long one, almost 3 hours, and we'll catch you next time.
Peace.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for another episode. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe and like button. Follow us. If you didn't like what you heard, still hit that anyway, because we'll probably cover something in the future that you do like. Please follow us on our social media. Adam, hit them with it.
Our Instagram is historically high pod, historically high pod, and we are on Twitter at historically high. That's historically HI.
All right. And if you guys want to send in any feedback, suggestions, hit us up on those two, or you can even do it on Gmail. It's historicallyhighpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again.
Peace.